Hey guys, tonight we ease into a world where every sunrise feels like a test, and you, yes, you, are about to wake up in ancient Rome, blinking at the faint light slipping past a wooden shutter that never quite closes right. The air smells like olive oil, dust, and a hint of your neighbour's cooking fire, because of course he wakes up way earlier than any reasonable human being. As you stretch, the Romans around you would say you're already surrounded by signs, tiny hints of what your day will become. Maybe a pot cracks, maybe a mouse squeaks, maybe a bird calls at the wrong moment. They swear these things matter, and honestly, given how chaotic their world is, you probably won't survive this without paying attention. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. It's always amazing to see where everyone is listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake groggily on a straw-stuffed mattress, with the faint ache in your back reminding you this isn't a posture-friendly era. Before you even stand, the Romans insist you should take stock of what omens the morning gives you. A little superstition goes a long way in a city built on them. Did your right eye twitch first? Good. Left eye? Not so good. Did you hear a rooster crow before sunrise? That's a cosmic red flag that even modern alarm clocks would refuse to acknowledge. As you push yourself upright, your heel nudges a clay cup sitting by your palate. It wobbles dangerously, and for one breathless moment you're convinced the universe is testing you. If it had toppled, the Romans might have interpreted that as a sign to stay home, avoid the marketplace, or at the very least proceed with the cautious energy of someone carrying a laptop without a case. It steadies. Barely. Congratulations. You may continue your day. A mainstream Roman belief, one everyone from slaves to senators agreed on, was that the gods loved speaking through everyday randomness. They didn't just give dramatic thunderbolts or awe-inspiring visions. No, they preferred tiny, inconvenient nudges, just like that almost fallen cup. Historians still argue whether these beliefs shaped Roman life more out of fear or out of a desire to feel connected to something bigger. Personally, as you glance at that cup again, you can't help thinking it might be a bit of both. You stand. Your ankle cracks loudly, loud enough that the neighbour's dog outside lets out a startled bark. Now, in your world, that's just biology and bad luck. But in Rome, this is practically the opening scene of a cosmic comedy. A sudden noise during a threshold moment, like standing for the first time each day, was considered a possible message. You glance at the doorframe, half, expecting it to pulse with spiritual significance. Nothing happens, at least nothing you can see. As you move around your cramped room, you notice how quiet it is. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, more like the eerie stillness before a city wakes up. In Rome, dawn is when omens feel loudest. People believed that at this early hour the boundaries between the human world and the divine were thinner. If something odd or out of place happens now, it carries more weight. Even the wind, if it happens to push your curtain at the wrong angle, could be interpreted as a sign from Fortuna, the goddess of luck. And she is famously moody. If she had a modern equivalent, she would be that one friend who cancels plans 5 minutes before meeting time and then texts you at midnight asking if you're still awake. You shuffle toward the low table where a small oil lamp sputters. You'd left it burning through the night. Romans did that often, partly for light, partly because shadows were considered suspicious. If the lamp burned unevenly or flickered strangely, this too was an omen. This morning the flame dances a little left, then steadies. You exhale. Good. A flicker to the right might have meant you'd argued with someone later. A flame bending low could have meant delays. Too bright. Unexpected visitors. Too dim. Personal weakness or misfortune. Honestly, at this point it's harder to find something that isn't an omen. And then, just as you're adjusting your tunic, something small, a spider, descends from the rafters, directly in front of your face. You freeze. In modern life, that's just a spider doing its 8-legged business. But in Rome, oh, this is practically a divine memo. Some Romans saw spiders as lucky. Others believed they warned of debt or financial strain. The fun part. The meaning changed depending on whether it crawled up or down. Your spider? It drifts downward, slowly, suspiciously. If there were spreadsheets back then, you'd probably be rechecking your budget. You gently blow it aside and keep moving. As you step into your sandals, the leather feels just slightly damp. Rome's version of an unpleasant morning surprise. Moisture in your shoes could mean bad luck. Wet feet at dawn? Worse luck. Accidentally putting your left shoe on first instead of the right? Catastrophic. The Romans had entire lists dedicated to don'ts for the first moments after waking up. You try to remember if you slipped the right sandal on before the left. You probably did, hopefully. You open your front door and are immediately greeted by a smell that hovers somewhere between baking bread and a sewer having an existential crisis. Rome in all its glory. But the truly important part, which foot you step outside with. Right foot first, fortune smiles. Left foot first, misfortune might trail you all day, tapping you on the shoulder like a child asking too many questions. You pause, realign. Step out with your right foot. The gods approve. Above, you. The skies are pale, soft blue, not quite light, not quite dark. This transitional moment is prime omen territory. A bird chirps overhead. Just one note. Short, sharp. Some Romans believed this meant you were safe today. Others said it meant you should avoid making decisions. Scholars still debate whether these auditory signs were taken literally or just conveniently molded to fit whatever people already felt like doing. You breathe in the cool morning air and feel the city stretching awake around you. Every doorway you pass, every stone you step on, every sound in the distance, each one holds meaning, or at least the Romans would say it does. And whether you believe in fate or not, you can feel yourself slipping into their mindset, interpreting the world through their lens, waiting for the next tiny sign to nudge your day in one direction or another. After all, in Rome, every moment carries the potential for cosmic commentary, and you're only just beginning. You barely make it a few steps down the hallway before you're reminded that, in ancient Rome, you aren't alone, not even when you think you're alone. The air feels different in the dim corridor of your domus. Not colder, not warmer, just watched. And that makes sense, because the Romans believed that every household existed under the constant supervision of its own personal spirits, the lares and penates. If this sounds like living with cosmic landlords who never sleep, well, that's not far off. You pause by the little household shrine tucked into a wall niche. It's tiny, barely the size of a modern shoebox, but it's the beating spiritual heart of any Roman home. A few fading figurines stare back at you, their painted eyes chipped from years of smoke and oil fumes. The lares, guardians of your household's boundaries, and the penates, spirits of your pantry and provisions, are basically here to make sure the roof stays on and the food stays edible. Low bar, but in Rome that's already ambitious. Your stomach grumbles at the thought of food. But before you even think about eating, Romans expect you to greet the spirits. Not an elaborate ritual, just a little gesture, a quiet moment. Something that says, "Hey, thanks for letting me wake up again." You light a tiny pinch of incense, watching the smoke curl upward like a sleepy serpent. It drifts lazily for a moment before splitting into two thin wisps. To a modern eye, that means the draft from the open doorway has opinions, but to a Roman, that means your household spirits are in a good mood. Two wisps, dual blessings. One wisp, ambiguous. No wisp, chaos. A mainstream Roman belief was that households with strong, active layers prospered. Wealth, crops, fertility, health. It all flowed from maintaining a good relationship with the spirits under your roof. Historians still argue whether these beliefs originally came from ancestor worship or earlier rural cults. Either way, ignoring them was like ignoring smoke rising from a pan and assuming dinner would magically save itself. Spoiler, it won't. You place a tiny offering on the shrine, just a crumb of bread and a splash of wine. This is the Roman equivalent of making sure your Wi-Fi router has good vibes before a big download. And honestly, you need all the luck you can get. Rome is the kind of place where a tile can fall off a roof and ruin your day. Literally. It happens enough that laws exist about it. As you turn away, you're sure, absolutely certain, you hear a faint tap from inside the wall. Probably a mouse, hopefully a mouse. But Romans, they would see that as a message. A penate's knock means, check your pantry. A lares knock means, someone in the household will test your patience today. You mentally prepare yourself for either option. preferably the mouse. You head toward the small central courtyard, stepping carefully because the floor tiles are uneven and the morning dew makes them slick. A sudden slip, even a tiny skid, would be interpreted as a warning that a decision today needs reconsidering. You walk with the caution of someone carrying a bowl of soup across a white carpet. No accidents. Good. Just as you reach the open atrium, a breeze stirs the hanging vines. The curtain flutters, brushing your arm. This isn't just a random gust in Roman logic. It's the layers acknowledging you. Their temples rarely stood outdoors. These spirits lived with you, breathed with you, and occasionally rustled your curtains just to remind you who's really in charge. You cross the courtyard, where the shallow household pool reflects a perfect patch of sky. Romans called it the compluvium, and it collects rainwater, but spiritually it's a mirror of the heavens. The water ripples slightly as you pass. A good sign, if it ripples inward. A bad sign, if it ripples outward. Yours? Inward. Fortuna smiles, or at least smirks. Just beyond the pool stands the small lararium altar, bigger than the shrine inside. This is where families hold daily rituals, light lamps, and occasionally whisper complaints about neighbours, the weather and taxes. Your fingers trace the carved surface, and for a moment you feel how deeply Romans connected their fate with these spirits. They didn't just believe in luck, they believed luck lived in their house, ate their offerings, and raised its spiritual eyebrows whenever they made questionable life choices. You think back to the spider from earlier. Imagine telling a Roman, "Oh yeah, a spider dropped down from the rafters onto my face," and then casually walking away as if you hadn't just received a cosmic voicemail. They'd stare at you like you'd spit on the spirit altar, because every tiny moment, every flicker of movement meant something. A quirky fact. Some Romans kept tiny terracotta dogs at their shrines because they believed household spirits like symbolic watchdogs. Spiritual security system. No subscription needed. You kneel to adjust your sandal strap and notice something odd. A faint crack along the edge of the lararium. Small, barely noticeable, like the stone let out a tired sigh. To us, just age. To a Roman, this could be a sign of displeasure. Maybe your offering crumb was too small. Maybe you forgot a ritual last week. Maybe the gods just woke up grumpy. All options are equally plausible. Historians debate whether Romans genuinely feared these spirits or just respected tradition because everyone else did. Some argue that the rituals were social glue, tiny daily acts that made life feel structured in an unpredictable world. And honestly, Rome is very unpredictable. Fires break out, carts overturn, politics get messy. Believing that invisible helpers hovered around your pantry probably made life feel a little less chaotic. You stand and straighten your tunic. The morning sun finally slips across the courtyard, illuminating the lararium in a warm, honeyed glow. That moment, sun hitting the altar, is considered extremely auspicious. The spirits are awake, alert, and attentive. You mentally check it off as a win for the day. Just as you're about to leave, a pigeon flutters down onto the edge of the roof. It coos once, gives you a stare filled with unsettling judgment, then flies away. Another sign. Always another sign. You half expect the layers to lean over and whisper, "Yep, that one counts too." Living in a Roman home means being gently nudged by unseen presences from sunrise to sunset. You are never alone, never unobserved, never free from interpretation. But as you step out of the courtyard and into the bustling world beyond your doorstep, you can't deny, having a group of tiny invisible house guardians looking out for you feels oddly comforting, even if they're just a little passive-aggressive. You step out of your doorway and immediately realize something the Romans understood on a bone-deep level. The world outside isn't neutral. Every street corner, every boundary stone, every intersection of paths is charged with strange energy. And if your household spirits were the cozy, somewhat judgmental roommates of your domestic life, the spirits lurking out here, they're the unpredictable neighbors who sometimes smile, sometimes steal your laundry, and sometimes hiss warnings you can't ignore. Your feet carry you toward a crossroads, a place Romans considered one of the most spiritually loaded locations imaginable. Not dangerous in a something's about to jump out and bite you way, but dangerous in a fate might pivot here whether you want it to or not way. Crossroads are liminal spaces, neither one street nor another, neither here nor there, and that makes them prime real estate for omens. As you approach, A gust of cool morning wind sweeps across your tunic. It brushes the dirt in swirling patterns on the ground. You pause to interpret it, because in Rome a breeze isn't just air, it's potential messaging. 1. Mainstream belief was that crossroads were guarded by the lares compitales, communal guardian spirits who oversaw entire neighborhoods. People offered honey cakes and garlands to them during festivals, hoping for good fortune and protection. Historians still argue whether these protective spirits started as rural boundary guardians or whether Roman officials used them as little surveillance hubs. But for now, you just try not to offend anyone invisible. You take one cautious step forward. A small pebble tumbles down from a nearby roof tile, landing right at your feet. In modern life, this means gravity works. In ancient Rome, that's practically a billboard flashing, maybe rethink your day's plans. You glance upward, half expecting some divine being to be dangling their legs off the roof edge like a bored teenager. Nothing there, just clay tiles and one nosy pigeon. Probably a coincidence. Probably. The crossroads itself is simple, 3 dusty streets meeting at a sunlit junction. But to Roman eyes, it's a miniature spiritual battlefield. Different forces tug in different directions. Fortuna, who wants to help you. Sometimes. The Fates, who don't care about your opinion. Random spirits who just like to meddle. Someone once joked, in a very Roman, very dry way, that if you wanted to meet every spirit who loved giving unsolicited advice, just walk to the nearest crossroads. You keep walking, but something shifts under your sandal. You look down. A piece of broken pottery lies half buried in the dirt. The way it sits, angled, pointing diagonally, catches your attention. Romans believed that objects found at crossroads, especially broken ones, had symbolic weight. Was it pointing north? South? Could its angle tell you which path to take? Some even whispered that discarded items at crossroads were offered to spirits. A quirky fact, people sometimes left tiny dolls here, creepy little terracotta figurines to appease wandering forces. You check the area quickly. No dolls, thank the gods. You continue, trying to step around anything that looks like a sign. But the street ahead is bustling. A cart rattles past, the wheels squeaking in a way that is definitely an omen, though the specifics depend on which ancient author you ask. 2 children dash across the intersection, laughing. The younger one tosses a handful of pebbles into the air and they clatter around your feet. Great. Now you're knee-deep in child-generated omens. One of the pebbles lands on your left sandal. Romans believed that anything hitting the left side of your body could signal trouble, unless it was a bird or a dog, or an omen specifically meant to warn someone else but delivered to you by mistake. Honestly, it's impressive any Roman ever left the house. As you carefully step around the scattered stones, you catch sight of a small shrine at the intersection, a simple pillar with a weathered face carved into it. This is a herm, a boundary marker dedicated to Hermes Just Mercury. Romans borrowed the idea from the Greeks. These statues guarded crossroads, protected travellers, and served as spiritual speed bumps to keep wandering forces from messing with humans too much. You touch the surface lightly, warm already from the morning sun. If the stone had been cool, bad sign. Too warm, weird sign. Cracked, very bad sign. Yours, thankfully, is just pleasantly warm, like a loaf of bread left near a hearth. But just as you turn away, a dog suddenly darts across the intersection and stops directly in your path. Its tail twitches, it sniffs the air, then it turns left. In an era obsessed with right-side omens being favourable, a left-turning street dog is practically a cosmic prank. You sigh. You weren't planning to go left. You definitely don't want to go left. But ignoring an omen at a crossroads is the spiritual equivalent of telling the universe, do your worst, and it will. Historians still debate how seriously the average Roman took these signs. Some evidence shows people mocked superstition, others point to diaries and letters fretting endlessly over tiny warnings. Maybe Romans were just like us, half believing, half joking, and entirely unsure what might happen if they chose wrong. You decide to take 5 cautious steps forward, the Roman number for restoring balance, before turning right, your original path. A small cheat, a minor negotiation with the divine. The dog doesn't protest, it just wanders off to sniff something deeply questionable in a gutter. You reach the far side of the crossroads and exhale slowly. You've survived a boundary crossing, one of many today. You almost want a sticker, I navigated the ominous intersection and all I got was mild anxiety. But as you continue down the street, one thing becomes clear. To Romans, the world was alive with meaning. Corners breathed, thresholds whispered, boundaries pulsed with significance. And whether or not you believe in it, you can feel that reality sinking into your skin. Every step forward might be ordinary, or it might be another clue about the fate unravelling around you. You haven't walked more than a few minutes before the sky overhead becomes the real star of your morning. Romans believed the gods loved communicating through birds, because of course they did. Birds fly, birds scream, birds show up unexpectedly like feathery little messengers who don't understand boundaries. And in Rome, if you ignored what birds were doing, you might as well have ignored a divine memo stamped urgent. As you move along the dusty street, you notice a patch of sky widening above the rooftops. It's early enough that only a few birds are awake, but Romans would tell you this is prime omen hour. The world is quiet, shadows are long, and the air holds that delicate stillness just before the chaos of daily life begins. A single raven croaks from a distant chimney. One cry, short, sharp. You freeze instinctively. Ravens were considered powerful omen bearers, sometimes good, sometimes terrible, always dramatic. You wait to see if it calls again. A second cry would change everything. But the bird goes silent, leaving the interpretation maddeningly vague, like a text message that ends in "we need to talk." A mainstream Roman belief was that augurs, priests trained in the sacred art of reading birds, were essential to public life. Elections, battles, building projects, even festivals required official bird readings. Records from the Republic say whole assemblies were cancelled if the augurs reported bad signs. Historians still argue whether augurs genuinely believed in their craft, or whether it was, the earliest form of political spin. Honestly, it was probably both. You keep walking, adjusting your pace as the street narrows. Your sandals click on stone, echoing faintly between the walls. Above you, a small flock of starlings erupts from a hidden nook beneath a roof tile. They burst into the sky with the frantic energy of a group that definitely wasn't planning to be awake yet. You watch them scatter, splitting into two groups, then coming together again like a tiny, confused army. Romans had rules for this. Too many rules, honestly. Flight patterns mattered, directions mattered, group size mattered. If birds scattered upward and leftward, that could hint at disruption. If they circled, that could indicate confusion in your household. If they flew straight ahead, good, clear, predictable. Unfortunately, your flock does all three before you finish blinking. You decide to keep moving before the birds offer even more opinions. As you turn onto a wider street, more birds appear. Pigeons, sparrows, a seagull that is definitely lost. Birds in Rome are like modern pigeons in New York, always nearby, occasionally bold, frequently rude. One plump pigeon waddles a little too close, then hops aside at the last moment. That hop? Yes, somehow that's an omen too. Romans believed the distance animals gave you could signal the gods' favour. If an animal refused to move, bad. If it moved too quickly, also bad. If it moved just the right amount, congratulations, you win today's cosmic lottery. You're not even sure what counts as just right. But the pigeon looked moderately respectful, so you'll take it. Farther ahead, you hear the flutter of wings above an intersection. Two crows swoop low, then soar upward in a tight synchronized arc. The Romans called these aerial dances signa avium, signs from birds. One quirky tidbit. Some people claimed certain birds spoke actual words if the gods really wanted to send a message. Not metaphorically, literally. As in, that bird just told me to avoid the forum today. You glance nervously at the crows. They do not appear chatty. The street opens into a small plaza, where an augur, an elderly man in a faded toga, stands on a raised stone, muttering to himself and gesturing at the sky. His eyes track invisible patterns between the birds and the horizon. You weren't planning to get a professional reading today, but he sees you and gives a subtle nod, inviting your attention. He performs a brief ritual, extends his staff, traces an imaginary boundary in the sky, and watches as a hawk glides across it. For a breathless moment, the hawk's wings tilt, catching the light in a way that makes it seem ethereal. The augur smiles faintly. Good omen. You feel a small wave of relief wash over you, like checking your phone and seeing a message you hoped for but didn't dare expect. The augur murmurs something about strong winds bringing opportunity. You thank him, even though you're not entirely sure what that means. Romans often spoke in poetic metaphors that sounded wise until you actually tried to apply them to your grocery list. As you leave the plaza, you notice a bird feather on the ground. Small, brown, delicate. To modern eyes, it's nothing. To Romans, feathers were portable omens. Finding a feather on your right side could signal upcoming success. On your left, caution. Directly in your path, decision time. This one lies right in front of your toes. You hesitate, then step over it gently. It feels like walking past a note you're choosing not to read. A sudden flutter draws your attention upward. A gull, yes, that same lost gull, dives toward a fish seller's stall, snatching a scrap of fish before darting away. The vendor curses loudly, shaking his fist. But you? You remember hearing that thievery by birds could be interpreted as a warning against overspending or misplaced trust. You mentally tighten your grip on your coin pouch, because you know Rome's markets are full of bargains that are definitely not bargains. Historians still debate how much of bird omen culture the average Roman actually practiced. Some think only priests cared deeply. Others point to letters and graffiti showing ordinary people agonizing over birds chirping at the wrong time of day. And you? You've already interpreted at least 6 bird signs this morning, and it isn't even breakfast yet. As you walk farther, from the houses and into a busy main road, you spot a final omen for the morning, a vulture circling high above the hills in the distance. Slow, steady, deliberate. Vultures were deeply symbolic, sacred to certain gods, linked to Rome's founding myths, and often associated with big dramatic events. A single vulture is unusual. Normally, omens involving them came in pairs. The lonely circle feels eerie, like the universe is hinting at something you can't quite grasp. You watch as it drifts slowly out of view. The sky returns to calm, the birds settle, the world regains its morning rhythm. And you can't help thinking that maybe, just maybe, the gods really do speak through wings and feathers, or maybe the Romans were just really good at making meaning out of chaos. Either way, you feel yourself slipping deeper into their world, where the sky above isn't just empty space. It's a constant whispered conversation. You've barely recovered from all the sky messages before the ground decides it also has opinions. Because in Rome, even the tiny accidents, those ordinary forgettable moments in modern life, carry the weight of divine commentary. You don't just sneeze. You don't just drop something. You don't just hear a weird noise behind you. No. These are omens. And you are now fully enrolled in the cosmic obstacle course that is Roman daily life. You step onto a slightly uneven paving stone and your foot slips just a little. Not enough to fall, but enough to kick your heart into a nervous flutter. Great. This is exactly the kind of moment a Roman would have panicked about. A mainstream belief held that unexplained stumbles, slips, or sudden noises meant the gods were trying to warn you, kind of like getting a push notification from Jupiter, except with zero clarity and no swipe to dismiss. You adjust your footing trying to convince yourself it was nothing. But the Romans had rules. If you slipped forward, your plans were still okay. If you slipped backward, cancel everything. Immediately, you replay the moment in your mind. It was forwardish, mostly. Probably fine, hopefully fine. A sudden sneeze erupts from a woman passing by. Loud enough to echo off the walls, she freezes, and so does everyone else. Because a sneeze wasn't just bodily chaos, it was communication. Some Romans believed sneezes were blessings, especially if they burst out mid-conversation. Others thought they were warnings about lies, deception, or illness creeping in like a thief. And some believed sneezes left you spiritually vulnerable for a moment. Your soul loosened, hovering awkwardly, like a balloon someone forgot to tie. The woman mutters a quick prayer. The man next to her nods solemnly. You, on the other hand, consider how absurdly stressful life would be if every pollen reaction had cosmic significance. A moment later, a clay jug slips out of a vendor's hands and shatters across the ground. The crack echoes like a whip. Every head turns. Shattered pottery is one of Rome's favourite message delivery systems. Some thought broken objects signalled misfortune for the person involved. Others insisted the omen transferred to whoever saw it first. You, unfortunately, saw everything. Historians still argue whether Romans genuinely feared these tiny signs, or whether they just liked pretending the universe was narrating their life. Either way, The vendor winces as if he's expecting Jupiter himself to descend and ask why he wasn't holding the jug tighter. You step gingerly around the shards. Avoiding broken clay is both a practical choice and an omen protection strategy. A quirky Roman tidbit. People sometimes deliberately broke pots to release harmful spirits trapped inside. So now you're stepping around either an omen or a freshly freed clay-dwelling entity. Neither option is comforting. As you move on, the street narrows into a tight alleyway. The soundscape changes. Less chatter, more echoing footsteps, more strange little noises that definitely weren't made by anything cute. Somewhere behind you, a faint thump sounds, like something fell off a shelf. You glance over your shoulder, but no one is there. In Rome, unexplained sounds were practically Morse code from the divine. A knock behind you could signal someone thinking of you. A knock above you, imminent change. A knock to your right, opportunity. To your left, complication. You sigh. The gods are starting to feel like nosy neighbours tapping on walls to complain about your noise level. The alley widens again, and sunlight touches your shoulders. You take a breath, relieved. But the moment you relax, a small lizard darts across your path and disappears beneath a pottery stall. Lizards were believed to be powerful omens, symbolising rebirth, warning, or even secret messages from the household gods. Some Romans kept them as good luck charms. Others thought they predicted illness, and of course some believed they were just lizards. You decide to go with that last interpretation before your brain melts. Roman superstition has no chill. You continue walking, minding every step when your sandal strap snaps loose. Not broken, just an annoying little flop against the pavement. To us that's mildly inconvenient. To Romans, oh, that's a sign of instability, disruption, misalignment. You crouch down to fix it and picture an angry Fortuna tapping her foot impatiently saying, "You weren't going to tighten that yourself?" As you tie the strap, two children run past, chasing each other, laughing loudly. Their sudden noise bursts through the quiet morning. Sudden sounds, especially laughter, were believed to reveal truths or expose lies said moments before. You can't help but look around guiltily, wondering if you accidentally thought a lie just now. Romans took this seriously enough that some refused to speak important words unless the world around them was perfectly still. You stand and brush the dust from your tunic. Ahead, you spot a man dropping a small bronze coin. It spirals, hits the stone, and lands face down. He swears under his breath. Coins falling face up meant incoming fortune. Face down meant the opposite. But when the man notices you watching, he gives a theatrical shrug, clearly trying to pretend fate didn't just slap him lightly across the cheek. The tension breaks when a street dog lets out a comically loud sneeze. A dog sneezing was considered lucky. One sneeze? Mild blessing. Two sneezes? Strong blessing. Three sneezes? Divine approval. This dog only manages one, then proceeds to scratch itself aggressively. You take the single sneeze as a small victory. You need it. As you pass by a public fountain, someone splashes water by accident, droplets landing on your sleeve. Water hitting you unexpectedly? Another omen. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes specifically tied to travel plans. You know what? You're not travelling today. You decide that means the omen doesn't apply. This feels like healthy boundary setting with the cosmos. A group of youths playing dice tosses a pair near your feet. Snake eyes. They freeze as if this is the climax of a tragedy. Dice rolls were believed to be influenced by the gods themselves. Tiny gambling prayers thrown into the air. Seeing snake eyes could signal deceit or missteps ahead. You calmly step around the dice. If the gods want to message someone, they can at least address it to the right person. Another sneeze erupts. Not a person this time, but you. Sharp, involuntary, borderline violent. Three passers-by immediately murmur a blessing. One man gives you a long, dramatic stare as if waiting for you to keel over. You don't. But the sneeze echoes in your skull like a tiny thunderclap. You wipe your nose, take a steadying breath, and realize something. This city interprets everything. Your steps, your slips, your noises, your silence. Every accidental moment has meaning. And as you continue toward the market, you can't help wondering how Romans kept their sanity while walking through what feels like a never-ending cosmic scavenger hunt. But maybe that was the point. In a world full of uncertainty, Even the tiniest accident could feel like a whisper of guidance, or a cosmic prank, depending on the god's mood. You finally reach a stretch of street where the noise settles into a comfortable hum, vendors muttering, sandals scuffing, distant dogs barking at absolutely nothing. And just when you think you've escaped the morning barrage of omens, Rome reminds you there's one more layer to this cosmic labyrinth: the things you carry. Because in this world, luck is portable, fate can be accessorized, and your survival might depend on whatever strange object you've tucked into your belt. Romans loved protective charms with the same enthusiasm modern people love phone cases, except instead of shock absorption and glitter, you're working with carved bones, knotted strings, and amulets shaped like body parts you didn't expect to see rendered in bronze before breakfast. You reach into your pouch and feel for the small charm you were told never to leave home without. It's smooth, round, warm from sitting against your skin. A little phallic amulet. Yes, that kind. The Romans called it a fascinum, and it was believed to protect against the evil eye. Mainstream belief says the symbol had so much raw, chaotic, generative power that it repelled curses, envy, and general bad vibes. It served the same purpose as wearing noise-cancelling headphones while entering the subway. Spiritual protection from unpredictable humans. You lift it discreetly and tuck it beneath your tunic again. A grandmother passing by gives you an approving nod, as if she can telepathically sense you're properly warded. This city is full of grandmothers with supernatural situational awareness. A quirky fact: some Romans hung enormous versions of these amulets from doorways or carts, swinging proudly like "Do not mess with us" signs. You walk past a baker's shop where one dangles above the entrance, decorated with tiny wings and bells. Because nothing says fresh bread like aggressively jingling supernatural protection. As you continue toward the market, you notice other charms in the crowd. A man with a knotted red string tied around his wrist, protection from envy. A woman wearing a miniature bronze fist, the mano fico, symbolizing strength and good fortune. A child clutching a small terracotta piglet, believed to bring prosperity and health. You can't help but think that if modern people adopted Roman habits, kids today would have backpacks filled with lucky raccoon figurines and anti-hex glitter. Historians still debate whether Romans truly believed in the power of these objects, or whether they were cultural habits, like knocking on wood or refusing to sit in a dentist's waiting room under a photo of a sad cactus. But regardless of belief, nearly everyone wore something. Emperors, soldiers, shop owners, slaves. It didn't matter. Misfortune was democratic. Your steps lead you past a stall selling charms and curiosities. The vendor is an older man with thick eyebrows and the air of someone who has never once doubted his connection to the spiritual world. His table is a chaotic mix. Seashells, bones, carved eyes, polished stones, miniature boots, tiny hands, and dozens of little metal shapes that look like they escaped from a very weird board game. He gestures at you. You look like someone who could use more protection. You're offended by how quickly he reached that conclusion, but given the amount of ominous nonsense you've walked through this morning, he might not be wrong. He holds up a gleaming amulet shaped like a tiny foot. Good for journeys, he says. Protects your steps, keeps you steady, no tripping. You think back to your earlier slip. Yep, that tracks. Next, he lifts a small hand with two, fingers extended. Warding gesture, very powerful, also useful for rude signals if needed. You try not to laugh. The Romans really had charms for every scenario. Then he picks up a stone with a hole through the center. This one finds love, he says, or at least fun. He raises a knowing eyebrow. You politely decline. As you browse, a loud clang startles you, a metal trinket falling from the table. You jump because sudden noises are still omens in the Roman worldview, and apparently your nervous system is fully committed to this roleplay. The vendor glances at the fallen object, a bronze crescent moon. Oh ho, he says. Luna sends you a message. You're not sure if Luna's message is buy this or clean your room, but the vendor seems convinced it's the former. Picking up the crescent, you admire its simple shape, cool weight, and faint engravings. Crescent moons were believed to protect against restless spirits, insomnia, and misfortune caused by envy. Essentially, Luna was the goddess of try not to be bothered by everyone today. You slip the amulet into your belt. Maybe it will help, or maybe the vendor is an excellent salesman. You continue down the street. The chatter of the market grows louder, the scent of warm bread and bruised figs drifting past like tiny edible omens. As you walk, you feel the charms on your body shifting slightly with each step. Your little phallic amulet, your crescent moon, the small knotted cord tied around your waist by your landlady, who insisted it would protect you from unfriendly spirits and unfriendly gossip. 2 different hazards, same solution. As you cross into the market square, a young woman brushes past you and drops a small object at your feet, a polished glass bead. She picks it up quickly, apologizes, and disappears into the crowd. In Roman belief, dropping a charm accidentally could mean its protection had just expired. Like a magical warranty running out at the worst possible moment, you pat your belt nervously, as if checking whether your charms still trust you. A nearby stall has a little wooden sign with painted letters. Charms for sale, to avoid bad days and bad people. A universal human concern. The vendor here, a cheerful woman with ink-stained fingers, offers a tray of miniature sun discs. For clarity and courage, she says. Good for arguing with your mother-in-law. You take one, if only to avoid the argument about why you didn't. As you wander through the market, you realize something important. Roman life is full of hazards. Fires, disease, collapsing roofs, unpredictable gods, unpredictable emperors, and the occasional goose with rage issues. Charms aren't just superstition, they're psychological armor. Tiny symbols of control in a world where so much is uncontrollable. You stop at the edge of the market, feeling the weight of your new amulet resting warmly against your hip. The breeze is gentle, the crowd buzzes with energy, and for the first time that morning you feel something subtle shift inside you. Not confidence exactly, more like companionship, even if it's with a pocket full of questionably magical objects. Romans carried luck with them because they believed fate was deaf unless you shouted with cymbals. And as you take your next step deeper into the day, you can't help feeling the charms shift slightly, like tiny, silent companions whispering, "Don't worry, we've got you." You leave the charm stalls behind, but something still lingers in your mind, a heaviness, a fuzziness, the faint feeling that you're forgetting something important. And then it hits you, not a memory, not a realization, but the unmistakable echo of your dream from last night. Romans believed dreams were messages, sometimes clear, sometimes cryptic, always worth paying attention to. It wasn't just a hazy movie your brain invented. No, in Rome, it was cosmic correspondence. You rubbed the sleep from your eyes as you walk, trying to piece together what you saw. You remember something about water, lots of it. A rushing river, maybe, and birds, or fish, or possibly a fish with wings. This is the problem with dreams. They never give you an easy-to-follow narrative. Romans knew this struggle too, which is why dream interpretation manuals were a thing. Yes, ancient Rome had early predecessors to the dream symbol books sold today at gas stations. A mainstream Roman belief held that dreams came in 2 types. Insomnium, which were meaningless nightmares caused by eating too much cheese before bed, and somnium, which carried genuine messages from the gods. Historians still argue whether the average Roman saw dream interpretation as sacred guidance, or just a party trick to impress friends. But considering how seriously they treated omens, you suspect dreams landed more in the "please don't ignore this" category. You pause near a shaded wall to reconstruct the dream. In it you remember crossing a shallow stream. The water was clear and cold, and you could see your reflection wobbling beneath the ripples. In Roman symbolism, crossing water was often a sign of transition, a shift, a journey, a challenge ahead. Not necessarily a bad omen, but definitely one that makes you glance up at the sky and mutter, "Really? Today?" Then there were the birds. You were almost certain they were birds, 3 of them, flying low over the water. 3 birds appearing in a dream was sometimes interpreted as a trinity of influences, past, present, and future, or body, mind, and spirit, or more simply, pack snacks today. Dream symbolism wasn't exactly standardized. As you stand contemplating this, an older woman selling flowers gives you a curious look. "You've seen something," she says, as casually as someone commenting on the weather. Romans could spot a dream-heavy face from a mile away. She waves you over with a handful of petals. "Tell me," she insists, "what did you dream?" You explain the water, the birds, the strange sense of rushing movement. She nods with sage enthusiasm, then promptly declares, "Ah, good. That means fortune is changing. Something new is coming. Could be good, could be bad, but definitely new. Her confidence is unsettling. You thank her anyway and continue walking, hoping the something new isn't another sandal malfunction. A quirky fact pops into your mind. Romans sometimes believed that if you told your dream to someone trustworthy, it lost its power to cause trouble. But if you told it to someone unreliable, the omen might twist against you. You glance back at the flower vendor. She looks kind enough, though her eyebrows did arch a little too dramatically. You decide to trust her. Mostly. The crowd thickens as morning settles in fully. You spot people doing their own dream rituals, touching the ground, muttering a phrase, making a symbolic gesture toward the sun. Some Romans believed dreams remained stuck to you until you shook them off. Literally, as you pass a man slapping his tunic like he's dusting crumbs off himself, you realize he's performing a ritual to clear lingering dream energy. You consider doing the same, but decide you already look overwhelmed enough. Your mind drifts again, unspooling details. In the dream, you weren't alone. You remember a shadowy figure watching from the far bank of the stream. Not threatening, just observing, like someone silently evaluating your choices. Romans believed ancestral spirits often visited through dreams, offering guidance or warnings. Maybe it was a guardian, or maybe your brain was throwing random characters into the mix because the lighting looked good. You try to shake off the unease, but it clings to you like morning mist. Historians still debate whether dreams played a bigger role in private life or public policy. There are letters from statesmen describing prophetic dreams before major decisions. Emperors reportedly woke in the night and changed decrees because of what they saw. Meanwhile, ordinary people use dreams to determine whether to travel, propose, invest, or plant crops. The dividing line between vision and subconscious chaos was blurry at best. As you continue walking, a man wearing a priest's robe steps out of a nearby doorway. He carries a small clay tablet with symbols etched across it. He stops you with a raised hand, not aggressively, but with the solemn authority of someone who takes dreams very, very seriously. "You carry a message," he says, eyeing you like he's deciding whether you're cursed or blessed. Your sleep was full. You blink. How do these people always know? Is it the bags under your eyes? The distant gaze? Or the lingering fishbird confusion? He asks you to describe your dream. You reluctantly give him the condensed version. He listens intently, nodding at each detail like a lecturer encouraging a nervous student. Finally he speaks. Flowing water means movement of fate. Birds above water mean messages from the divine. He pauses dramatically. But 3 birds, that is guidance. You are watched, protected even. Protected sounds nice, watched sounds less nice. He places a hand lightly on your shoulder and mutters a short blessing. For a moment you feel a faint warmth spread through your chest. Maybe it's psychological. Maybe it's divine. Maybe it's just the sun finally hitting your ribcage. Either way, it calms you. As you continue down the street, you notice your steps feel lighter. Dreams, in the Roman worldview, aren't meant to paralyze you with fear. They're meant to nudge you, to prepare you, to remind you that the world is bigger than your morning errands. The memory of the winged fish, if it really was a winged fish, still makes you smile. Maybe that part was nonsense. Maybe the gods were testing your artistic interpretation skills. Or maybe, in the strange layered logic of the Roman mind, even nonsense carried meaning. And you can't deny the effect. Your day feels charged, alive, humming with potential. As you approach the entrance to the crowded marketplace, you glance back once, half expecting to see the dream figure standing there, waiting on the far bank of your imagination. But the street is empty, and your journey continues, dream shadow lingering gently at your heels. The marketplace opens before you like a living tapestry, threads of voices, colours, smells and signs weaving together in ways only Rome could pull off. You step beneath an awning of woven reeds, and instantly the energy shifts. This isn't your quiet courtyard, or the enigmatic crossroads, or even the omen-loaded alleyways. This is the Roman marketplace, where every sound, every glance, every misplaced chicken is a potential prophecy waiting to happen. Here, omens don't come from the sky, they come from people, from the way vendors shout, from the direction animals move, from accidents, coincidences, and tiny moments of chaos that ripple outward like pebbles tossed into a pond. You take your first careful step forward, only to be nearly bowled over by a goat wearing a bell that jingles like it's mocking your personal space. The goat pauses, looks you dead in the eyes, bleats once, and trots away. A symbol of prosperity, a warning about stubbornness, a message to drink more water. Romans debated this stuff endlessly. One mainstream belief held that animals wandering through the market were messengers from Fortuna, but no one could agree on what the messages actually meant. Historians still argue whether these interpretations were genuine or just excuses to gossip by the vegetable stands. You slide out of the goat's path and into a stream of shoppers. A man selling olives yells loudly, "Fresh, fresh, lucky olives for a lucky day." He spots you hesitating and winks. You look like you need luck. Why does everyone keep saying that? You buy a single olive just to avoid the social pressure of being publicly identified as unlucky. The olive is bitter. Of course it is. You weave deeper into the market until a sudden shout erupts nearby. A fish vendor waves frantically, pointing at a massive carp thrashing on his stall. The fish slaps its tail loudly, once, twice, 3 times, before flopping to stillness. The crowd murmurs. 3 tail slaps could signify good fortune depending on who you ask, or danger, or incoming weather changes. Romans loved sets of 3s. They saw patterns everywhere, even when logic begged them to stop. A woman beside you gasps. "A sign," she says. "Something important will happen today." You resist the urge to respond. "Yeah, I was planning to buy basil." Just when you think the fish performance is over, a seagull swoops in, maybe the same chaotic one from earlier, and lands directly on the fish stall. The vendor shouts, the gull shrieks, and several customers interpret this as at least 3 different omens simultaneously. You back away slowly. If there's one thing you've learned, it's that where fish and birds intersect, fate gets unnecessarily complicated. You stop to examine a table of pottery when the merchant drops a cup. It rolls farther, keeps rolling, it stops at your foot. He freezes. You freeze. The crowd freezes. In Roman superstition, if a loose object rolls toward you, especially one that isn't broken, it means fate is pointing in your direction, sometimes favourably, sometimes ominously. The pottery seller looks at you with a blend of dread and respect usually reserved for minor demigods or people who threaten to leave a bad review. You gently push the cup back his way. He nods solemnly and declines to charge you for a small bowl you weren't planning to buy anyway. Congratulations, you've earned a courtesy discount from the gods of household dishware. As you navigate the stalls, the sheer density of stimuli turns the world into a sensory mosaic. Someone shouts about fresh figs. Someone else insists their onions are luckier than the onions from 2 stalls down. A dog barks insistently at a basket of eggs. A child drops a doll on the ground and picks it up backward, which her mother interprets as a sign she will marry young. The child, being no older than 6, is too busy eating a grape to care. A quirky Roman tidbit surfaces in your mind. Many believed that if you heard your name accidentally spoken in the market, it meant the gods wanted your attention. Moments later, you swear you hear someone call something close to your name, though it might just be a man yelling for Marcus while swallowing half the vowels. Still, it makes your heart jump. You keep walking, passing a spice seller whose stall smells like cinnamon mixed with a distant hint of goat. He waves you over excitedly. You! You have the face of someone who saw omens this morning. He says this to literally everyone, but you still feel targeted. He presses a handful of rosemary into your palm. "Burn this later," he says. "It clears the air, opens the mind." You don't have the heart to tell him you don't own a fire pit. You continue deeper into the chaos and suddenly something hits you. Soft, warm, and wet. A tomato. A very ripe tomato. It didn't fall from a stall. It didn't roll off a cart. It fell from above. You slowly look up. A monkey, yes, an actual monkey, sits perched on a balcony ledge, staring down at you with the mischievous confidence of an animal who knows no human can punish him. Monkeys were brought to Rome as exotic pets and were often interpreted as unpredictable omens. A monkey throwing fruit at you. The universe might be laughing, or warning you to expect the unexpected, or suggesting you buy tomatoes. The crowd laughs, someone points, you wipe your tunic and accept your fate. Moments later, a small procession passes, a group of women carrying baskets of grain, murmuring prayers to Ceres. They move in perfect rhythm. As they walk, a man steps forward accidentally, cutting through their path. The women gasp, everyone else gasps. The man apologizes profusely before backing away like a criminal fleeing a crime scene. Breaking a ritual procession, even unintentionally, was considered a terrible omen. People are still whispering about it after the women disappear into the crowd. Historians still debate whether the fear of market omens was exaggerated by writers or truly embedded in daily life. Some argue that the bustling marketplace created a sense of hyper-awareness. Every unusual sound or sight became meaningful. Others insist Romans genuinely believed their fate could turn on a dropped carrot. You believe both. As you move toward the center of the square, you see one final omen unfold. A merchant counting coins loses his grip, and one coin bounces into the air, lands flat, then spins, and stops on its side. Perfectly balanced. The merchant gasps. The crowd gasps. Even you gasp. A coin landing on its edge was seen as a message from Fortuna herself, a sign of a balanced decision, a moment of rare cosmic equilibrium. The merchant immediately closes shop for the day. He's not risking ruining the symbolic perfection. You stare at the coin long after the stall shutters. Something about it feels serene, grounding. Amid the market's chaos, here is balance, center, stillness. You turn away, carrying that image with you. A single coin defying its nature, standing between luck and fate like a silver sliver of certainty. In a world overflowing with omens, even one small moment of equilibrium feels like a blessing. You finally drift out of the densest part of the market, clutching your purchases and your sanity like two fragile eggs. The path ahead opens into a quieter street lined with small eateries, bakeries and homes with open windows. You breathe a little easier, until the scent of roasting garlic and warm bread reminds you that in Rome, even meals were obsessed with omens. Eating wasn't just eating, it was a ritual, a negotiation with fate, and a daily tightrope walk between hunger and superstition. Your stomach growls, which in Roman logic could be an omen itself, depending on volume, timing, and whether anyone else heard it. Fortunately, the only witness is an elderly man sweeping his doorway. He doesn't look up. Good. No one needs to assign cosmic meaning to digestion today. You wander toward a small papina, a street-side food stall where a few early customers already sit on stools. A pot of lentil stew bubbles over a charcoal fire. Bread loaves cool on a wooden table. A platter of olives glistens invitingly, even though your last olive betrayed you. As you approach, the cook nods and gestures to an empty spot. You sit, careful not to let your cloak drape improperly, because Romans believed sitting with fabric bunched behind you could trap bad fortune. You have no idea how that works, but you adjust your tunic anyway. Stew? The cook asks. You nod. He ladles out a portion and sets it in front of you. But before you take a bite, a thought flashes across your mind. Romans had rules. Many, many rules. And meals were no exception. First, the bread. You tear it carefully. Never break bread unevenly if you can help it. Uneven pieces could signal imbalance in your day or disharmony in your household. You focus like a surgeon and manage two pieces that are mostly symmetrical. Victory. Next, the placement. Don't set bread upside down. Terrible luck. Unthinkable. An insult to the household spirits, the kitchen spirits, and possibly the chicken spirits, even if chickens weren't involved. You double-check your pieces like a paranoid parent checking on a sleeping baby. Then comes the olive oil. Romans loved drizzling oil over everything. Bread, stew, life problems. But spilling oil accidentally? Disaster. Omen of scarcity. A sign of financial trouble. You lift the small jug carefully, hand steady, breath held. A perfect pour. No spill. The layers themselves would applaud. A mainstream Roman belief held that food wasn't just nourishment. It was spiritually charged. Dining brought you closer to the gods, your ancestors, and the forces shaping your fate. Historians still argue whether these beliefs stemmed from ritual traditions or from the psychological need to control an unpredictable world. Either way, you start eating slowly, respectfully, as if your stew might judge you. The cook eyes you with amusement. You're being careful, he says, not accusatory, just observant. You shrug and spoon another mouthful. Behind you, two men sit discussing business. One suddenly lets out a loud hiccup. The other gasps and touches his forehead. A hiccup during a negotiation meant the gods were interrupting, or objecting. The men immediately stop talking. One mutters a brief prayer to Mercury, patron of commerce. You pause mid-bite, trying not to hiccup in sympathy. A dog wanders by, sniffing at a piece of bread someone dropped earlier. It eats the crust, then walks in a small circle near your stool before moving on. Dog circles? Oh, absolutely omens. Some believed they indicated confusion. Others thought they warned of incoming gossip. A few claimed dog circles performed clockwise signalled protection. You choose the positive interpretation because you are tired of cosmic ambiguity. As you sip the last of your stew, the cook drops a wooden spoon onto the counter. It clatters loudly. Conversations pause. Dropped utensils were believed to predict visitors, unexpected ones, possibly welcome, possibly annoying. Judging by the cook's sigh, he expects the latter. Then a young woman seated 2 stools down sneezes delicately into her cloak. Laughter ripples through the group. Good sign, someone says. Sneezing after a meal? A blessing from the gods of fullness. You're relieved to learn not all sneeze omens are ominous, only most of them. You pull your coin pouch from your belt to pay, but the moment you open it, a single coin leaps free, flinging itself dramatically to the ground like it's auditioning for a tragedy. It spins, slides across the dusty floor, and stops heads up. Everyone around you inhales sharply. Heads up coins meant fortune, prosperity, smooth travel. Some even said it reflected divine approval of your conduct. You pick it up gently, as if it might dissolve in your fingers. An older woman at the end of the counter smiles warmly. You carry good signs today, she says. Protect that coin. You make a mental note to do so. Maybe you'll even give it its own pocket. As you prepare to leave, the cook stops you. Take a pinch of salt, he says. It keeps misfortune at bay. Salt was precious, powerful, sacred. Spilling it was one of Rome's worst culinary omens, but giving salt, a blessing. He drops a few rough grains into your palm. You nod gratefully, feeling like you've just been handed a handful of magical gravel. On your way out, you pass the kitchen side where a slave is sweeping the floor. He pauses to blow gently across the hearth fire. You remember hearing that extinguishing a flame incorrectly during cooking could summon bad luck, so hearthkeepers had rituals for even the smallest ember. He catches your glance and shrugs. Better safe than struck by lightning, he jokes. You wander down the street feeling surprisingly grounded. Maybe it's the warm stew, maybe it's the coin, maybe it's the pinch of salt now sitting in your pocket like a silent guardian. But as you go, you can't help noticing how food, simple, everyday food, is woven tightly into Rome's spiritual fabric. Meals are more than nourishment. They're opportunities, risks, dialogues with fate. A momentary lapse of attention, spilled oil, overturned bread, misplaced spoon, can shift the course of the day. No wonder Romans treated dining with reverence. It wasn't just cooking, it was negotiation with the universe. You pat your coin pouch one last time and continue on your way, the flavour of garlic lingering on your tongue. Somehow, between the bread, the stew and the omens, you feel a little more prepared for whatever signs the rest of the day has in store. You step back into the open street, belly warm from stew and mind buzzing with the memory of salt, coins, bread, and the constant hum of Roman superstition. The world around you feels sharper now, edges outlined with meaning, corners humming with possibility. And as you wander deeper into the heart of the city, you realize something quickly. Rome isn't just loud. Rome is communicating. Every wall, every animal, every sound, every smell. All of it is part of an enormous, sprawling conversation between humans and fate. And here, in the streets, that conversation never stops. The noise hits you first. A steady growl of vendors, clanging metal, hoofbeats, gossip, dogs barking, and someone coughing dramatically enough to earn an omen of their own. But beneath the chaos is a strange rhythm, a pattern Romans swore they could interpret if they listened closely enough. A cart creaks to your left. A wheel squeals occasionally. Not just wear and tear, but a sign. Certain squeaks were thought to predict travel delays or lost items. You're not travelling far today, but you still find yourself mentally checking your pockets like a nervous squirrel. To your right, someone slams a door. Hard. That matters too. Sudden sharp noises were interpreted as cosmic punctuation marks, little exclamation points from the universe. If you were speaking when a noise struck, it meant the gods agreed with you. If you were thinking something, well, you hoped they agreed with that too. You head down a lively street lined with houses whose walls are splashed with graffiti. Roman graffiti, which is far more varied than the stuff scrawled in modern train stations. Some messages are political slogans, some are declarations of love, some are insults involving goats that you hope are metaphors, and some are omens. One piece of graffiti stops you in your tracks, a crudely drawn eye staring directly at you. Beneath it, someone has scratched, "Fortuna sees you." You shift uncomfortably. In Rome, the evil eye, invidia, was taken very seriously. An envious glance could ruin fortunes, shrivel crops, or sour milk. People painted apotropaic symbols everywhere to fight it off. You glance at your charms, your moon amulet, your knotted cord. Good. You're covered. Probably. A boy runs past you waving a stick, shouting something about a race. Behind him, two men argue about why his left sandal strap broke mid-run. Clear proof, to them, that he should avoid competitions today. One insists it's a message from Mercury. The other says it's because the kid obviously tripped in the mud. Scholars still debate which interpretation Romans favoured more, divine message or practical reality. Spoiler, divine message usually wins. You move on, passing a butcher shop where the scent of cooked meat hangs heavy in the air. A dog sits by the entrance, watching the butcher intently. Animals lingering outside certain shops were considered signals. Dogs outside a butcher? Normal. Dogs? Staring, unmoving, as if in meditation. Not normal. Possibly a sign of shifting fortune. The butcher notices you looking and shrugs. He's been sitting like that all morning. Means something big is coming. His tone suggests this is neither exciting nor reassuring. Next, you find yourself dodging a flock of chickens that burst suddenly into the street. Chickens, in Rome, aren't just food, they're political consultants. The sacred chickens used in augury were believed to give military approval by eating grain with enthusiasm. You look at these chickens. They are not enthusiastic. They look mildly offended by existing. You take that as a warning to avoid making any big decisions in the next 5 minutes. A quirky fact comes to mind. Romans thought chicken behaviour could predict both personal and public events. Weather changes, arguments, or even marriage outcomes. They were basically feathered life coaches. As you sidestep the cranky birds, you pass a small shrine dedicated to Mercury. Offerings clutter the base. Coins, beads, scraps of fabric. One small bronze hand catches your eye, its fingers arranged in the sign of protection. You pause and place a finger to your forehead. A subtle gesture Romans believed shielded the mind from stray curses. The nearby worshippers nod approvingly. You pretend you definitely knew what you were doing. A loud clang snaps your attention to the left. A metalworker drops a hammer, and it strikes the ground with a ringing tone, surprisingly melodic. Some Romans believed pleasant metallic tones were blessings from Vulcan, god of fire and craftsman. The metalworker hums contentedly, apparently satisfied with the divine performance review. Then, as you continue, you hit the smell zone. Rome is notorious for this. One moment you're inhaling fresh bread, and the next you're assaulted by something between rotten anchovies and philosophical despair. But even smells were omens. Sweet scents drifting unexpectedly meant good luck. Foul odours hitting suddenly meant trouble, or sometimes ghosts. Yes, ghosts. Romans truly thought certain smells announced wandering spirits. You pass a baker's stall, sweet, lucky. You pass a tanner's shop, horrifying, unlucky. You pass a bathhouse door where steam curls out like a ghostly hand. Warm, aromatic, inviting, mixed omen, mixed feelings. As you process the olfactory roller coaster, a sudden gust of wind kicks up dust at your feet. Dust spirals, small, swirling, almost delicate. Mini whirlwinds were believed to be spirits in motion. Some Romans touched swirling dust for luck. Others avoided it like it was angry bees. You step around it, cautiously. No need to get involved with airborne spirits before lunch. The street's noise rises suddenly and then falls, as if the city itself is inhaling and exhaling. You catch snippets of conversations. Did you hear? A crow cawed twice at dawn. Bad sign. The wine jar cracked during pouring. Terrible. A beggar touched my sleeve. Fate is watching. Rome is full of people interpreting the same world in different ways, but one belief unites them. The streets are alive with signs. The city whispers. The walls watch. Every chance encounter can tilt a day toward fortune or misfortune. And as you walk, you feel it too, an invisible vibration beneath your feet, a sense that the city is always trying to tell you something. You pause at the end of the street. Ahead lies an open square bathed in bright sunlight. And for a rare moment you feel the noise fade, the symbols quiet, the omens pause, just for a breath. Just long enough for you to wonder whether fate is giving you room to take your next step, or waiting to surprise you. You stand at the edge of the sunlit square, letting the brightness settle across your skin like a warm cloth. For the first time today, the omens feel a little quieter, less insistent, less like a cosmic game of charades. And in that brief hush, you begin to sense the deeper machinery underneath all these daily signs. Not the charms, not the birds, not the spilled oil or rolling cups. Something older, something heavier. In Rome, beneath all the little superstitions, there's a foundational belief that shapes everything. Fatum, fate. The unbreakable thread woven by forces far beyond your control. You take a step into the square, and it feels as if the air grows thicker. Not in a threatening way, but in a way that reminds you that every Roman walks through life sensing invisible threads, pulling, guiding, resisting, looping. You're part of that web now, whether you like it or not. A street performer stands near a fountain, juggling 3 clay balls. Not impressive today, but extraordinary in a world where almost everything breaks if you breathe too hard near it. He tosses a ball high, and everyone's eyes follow its arc. He misses the catch. It shatters. The tiny crowd winces, not because of the noise, but because the performer mutters, "It was fated." And just like that, the mood shifts. Fate becomes the explanation, the comfort, the excuse. A mainstream Roman belief held that fatum was fixed, set in motion by the gods, anchored by the fates, and immune to human desire. Historians still argue whether Romans truly believed their destinies were predetermined, or whether this was just a philosophical framework to help them endure the constant unpredictability of life. But when something happened, good or bad, calling it fate, helped people breathe easier. You take a seat on a bench near the fountain. The water burbles rhythmically, sparkling in the midday light. A small child tosses in a pebble. The ripple moves outward, then evaporates into stillness. Romans loved symbolic ripples. They saw fate as an ocean, vast, indifferent, full of currents you couldn't see until they caught you. Across the square, 2 men debate loudly about fate versus free will. One insists fate is inescapable. The other argues humans can negotiate with fate if they read the signs correctly. They gesture wildly, nearly slapping a passing baker with a loaf of bread. The baker ducks just in time, mutters a prayer, and hurries off. You're not sure if the near-loaf incident was fate or terrible spatial awareness. You wander closer to the 2 men, curious. Their conversation drips with the philosophical flair Romans loved. "The thread is fixed," the first man says. "You can tug the thread," argues the second, "even if you can't break it. You consider your morning. Slips, birds, charms, spilled stew. Are you tugging the thread of fate? Or is fate tugging you?" As you contemplate this, an old woman sits beside you, clutching a basket of figs. She looks like someone who has lived long enough to stop worrying about signs and simply accept the universe with a tired shrug. "You're thinking hard," she says. You nod. "Fatum," she continues, "is like a road. You walk it, but you choose your pace." Her voice carries the soothing cadence of someone who's repeated this line countless times. You cannot leave the road, but you can change how loudly your sandals slap the stones. You smile. It's oddly comforting. A quirky belief floats into your memory. Some Romans thought certain moments in life were fixed points, unchangeable events fate demanded. But everything else around those points could shift. Like a river flowing toward the sea, it must reach the ocean, but it can twist and curve however it wants on the way. You watch a merchant rearranging her fruit stall. One apple rolls off and hits the ground. She stares at it, sighs, and says, "Of course, it's time." She packs up and leaves early, not because the apple meant anything in the literal sense, but because in her worldview, the apple was the nudge fate used to say, "Move along." Nearby, a coin seller performs a small ritual before opening his chest of money. He kisses his hand, taps it twice on the box and whispers, "If fate wills it." He's done this every day for years, not because he's required to, but because acknowledging fate gives him a sense of peace. Historians still argue whether rituals like these were practiced out of genuine fear or as a kind of social rhythm. Small, repeated motions that made life feel structured. They may have been both. Humans crave control, and when life offers very little, fate becomes a comforting frame. If everything is part of a bigger plan, then even misfortune has meaning. A sudden breeze lifts the hem of your tunic. Soft, almost gentle. You shiver instinctively. Breezes like this, unexpected, directionless, were thought to be fate brushing past you. A reminder, a whisper, a nudge. You rise from the bench, feeling the thread of your day pulling you forward. As you walk, the thought settles comfortably. Fate might set the stage, but you're still the one crossing it. Maybe the gods wrote the outline, but you're improvising the dialogue. And in this dance between destiny and choice, you begin to understand something profound. Romans didn't fear fate. They lived with it, negotiated with it, argued with it, found comfort in it, because believing fate had a plan, any plan, made the chaos of the world feel a little less sharp. You step into the next street, sensing the thread of your own fatum pulling gently, steadily, inevitably onward. You follow the thread of your day into a quieter quarter of the city, one where the streets feel narrower, the shadows feel longer, and conversations drop to a hush when strangers approach. This is the realm of Rome's stargazers, dream readers, horoscope writers, and cosmic consultants. And if fate is the grand design behind everything, then these people claim they can read the blueprint. You turn a corner and spot them almost immediately. Astrologers. Rome has plenty of them, some brilliant, some dubious, some dramatic enough to rival modern influencers. They set up in shaded alcoves, hunched over scrolls covered in circles, symbols, and tiny ink stars. One man leans over a chart so intensely you worry he might fall into it. Another raises his hands toward the sky as if giving Jupiter a weather update. Astrology in Rome was huge. A mainstream belief held that the position of the stars at your birth shaped your personality, fortunes, temperament, and even your health. The heavens were a cosmic spreadsheet, and these astrologers claimed to know how to read it. People from every class, slaves, merchants, senators, visited them. Even emperors, especially emperors. You step closer to a stall draped in dark blue cloth painted with constellations. A woman sits behind it, her hair braided with small silver beads. She looks up at you with calm, steady eyes, the kind of gaze that says she already knows 3 things about you that you don't know yourself. "You carry questions," she says simply. You blink. Of course you do. You've been collecting omens since dawn like a cosmic scavenger hunt. She gestures for you to sit. You hesitate. Astrology, in Roman society, is both revered and feared. Emperors banned it several times, not because they disapproved of star reading, but because they were terrified someone would produce a chart predicting their downfall. Historians still argue whether these bans were actually enforced, or whether astrologers simply worked more discreetly during those years. Probably both. People don't give up cosmic insight just because the emperor is having a paranoid week. You sit on a small stool. The astrologer pulls a wax tablet toward you. "Your birth sign?" she asks. You tell her the Roman equivalent, based on the constellation the sun was in when you were born. She nods slowly, her fingers tracing invisible lines. "Ah," she murmurs, "that explains the restless energy following you today." Restless energy. Yes. You suppose dodging goats, juggling omens, and avoiding cosmic missteps counts. She tilts her head. You crossed a threshold this morning. Something shifted, the sky reflects it. You think back. The crossroads, the household spirits, the morning omens. She's not wrong. Something did shift, though you're not sure whether it was fate or your sandal strap. She sketches a small circle divided into 12 sections, the zodiac houses. Around them, she marks the paths of Mars, Venus, and Mercury with surprising speed. Roman astrologers weren't casual about this stuff. Many were mathematically trained, capable of calculating planetary positions with nothing but a wooden stylus and stubborn determination. She points to Mars. "He is loud today," she says. "Be cautious in arguments." You nod politely, even though you weren't planning to argue with anyone except maybe your own anxiety. Then she gestures toward Mercury. Travel is favoured, she adds. If you must move between districts, do it soon. Given how Rome's streets tend to throw omens at you like overenthusiastic pigeons, this feels like excellent advice. She pauses, eyes narrowing slightly as she studies the chart. Someone watches over you, she says. Not a god. A person. Someone close. Or someone soon to be close. You swallow. That dream figure from last night flashes briefly in your mind, the one standing by the riverbank. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe not. She closes the wax tablet with a gentle tap. The signs are favourable today, she says, but watch for unexpected messengers. You're not sure if she means people, birds, or falling fruit. In Rome, all three are equally plausible. You thank her and stand to leave. Before you can walk away, an older astrologer seated nearby waves you over. His robes are faded, his beard long, his expression permanently sceptical, like someone who's watched the stars for too long and concluded they're just messing with everyone. You, he says gruffly, let me see your hand. You offer it hesitantly. He examines the lines with a frown. You're not from here, he says. You open your mouth to reply, then close it again. What are you supposed to say? Correct, sir. I am a modern human temporarily trapped in an ancient world of omens and unpredictable foul. He shakes his head. No matter. Fate touches all travellers. He releases your hand and mutters, be careful of shadows today. Not dangerous shadows, significant ones. Before you can ask what that means, he leans back and resumes, glaring at the horizon. You continue walking, heart ticking a little faster. Astrologers aren't just entertainers in Rome, they're influencers of the ancient world. An emperor once cancelled a journey because his astrologer predicted storms. Another delayed a wedding. Another executed astrologers who predicted his death, then died exactly when they said he would. Rome took the stars seriously, maybe too seriously. Passing another stall, you overhear a customer whispering, "Should I invest in wool this month?" The astrologer consults her chart with the solemnity of someone choosing a burial plot. "Not until Jupiter leaves that house," she replies. You don't know what that means. You're pretty sure she doesn't either, but the customer nods as if handed sacred wisdom. As you step out of the astrologer's alley, the air feels brighter, lighter, like leaving a room filled with incense and whispered secrets. You glance at the sky. The clouds drift lazily. The sun glows steadily. The world feels normal again. But something subtle lingers, a sense that the stars overhead aren't just distant lights. They're watching, accounting, aligning, a cosmic ledger forever updating. And you can't help glancing upward one more time before turning the corner, wondering whether the sky just tilted a fraction, subtly shifting the shape of your day. Because in Rome, fate writes in ink, but the stars annotate in the margins. You leave the astrologers behind, stepping into a quieter stretch of alley where sunlight barely reaches the ground. The air cools, the stones darken, and a hush settles over everything, an uneasy kind of quiet, like the city itself is holding its breath. And almost immediately you sense it. You've wandered into the territory of curses. Not the loud, theatrical curses shouted by frustrated merchants or angry grandmothers. No, these are the whispered kind, the secret kind, the kind scratched into lead tablets and buried in the earth, where only the gods and the unlucky victims would ever know. Rome may love omens, but it absolutely thrives on curses. You slow your steps without meaning to. The alley curves gently around a public fountain, where the water trickles with an oddly hollow sound. A man crouches nearby, carving something into a thin sheet of metal. Lead, likely. You know exactly what he's making. A defixio. A curse tablet. Small, foldable, concealable. The ancient equivalent of sending a particularly nasty email directly to the divine inbox. He looks up, surprised to see you. Then he covers his tablet with his cloak. A totally normal reaction from someone who is definitely not writing something polite. A mainstream Roman belief held that curses were a legitimate tool, just another way to influence fate when the gods didn't seem to be listening. Lost a business dispute? Curse. Suspect your neighbour of stealing your goat? Curse. Want your rival to trip slightly but not die because you're not a monster? Curse. Romans had a curse for everything. Historians still argue whether curse tablets were written out of genuine spiritual belief or out of emotional catharsis. The sheer number of tablets found, thousands, suggests both. A whole city whispering into the dark, hoping the universe would whisper back. You continue walking, and you notice strange offerings tucked into cracks in the walls. Bits of hair, knotted cords, broken pottery, even small figurines twisted into uncomfortable shapes. All of them are signs that someone has been doing magic here. Not public magic, not harmless charms, the shadowy, personal kind. A woman steps into the alley from a doorway holding a clay jar. Her eyes flick toward you, sharp, assessing, a little guarded. She carries the jar carefully, like it contains something alive, or something that might become alive if shaken too hard. She approaches the fountain, whispers a few words under her breath, and pours a thin stream of liquid into the water. The fountain bubbles strangely as the liquid mixes in, creating a pale swirl. She waits for a moment, listening, watching. When nothing dramatic happens, she nods to herself and disappears back into the doorway. You don't ask what she poured. You don't want to know. A few steps later, something glints at the base of the wall. You crouch down and find a small lead tablet folded tightly. The edges are dented from being pressed shut. Someone used a stylus to scratch letters into it. Tiny, cramped, desperate. You're tempted to unfold it, but that would be like opening someone's very cursed diary. You gently place it back. As you straighten, a chilling breeze brushes your neck, not cold enough to raise alarm, but eerie in this sunless corner. Romans believed that curses could stir the air, drawing the attention of spirits or the restless dead. A quirky tidbit. Some people invoked underworld gods, Hecate, Pluto, the daimons, to deliver curses. The dark alley is starting to make more sense. Up ahead, an elderly man sits at a small wooden table with carved symbols etched into its surface. He's a professional curse scribe, one of those shadowy figures who made a living helping people petition the darker forces of the universe. He looks at you with a tired kind of curiosity, like he's deciding whether you look troubled enough to be a customer. Need justice? He asks. You shake your head. Revenge? He presses. Another shake. He shrugs. Everyone does eventually. You can't tell if that's comforting or threatening. He gestures to a small box at his feet. Bring me a name, a scrap of cloth, a piece of hair. I'll handle the rest. You take a polite step backward. He smiles knowingly, as if he's seen 100 nervous first-timers. What about protection, you ask, because suddenly that feels more relevant. He nods approvingly and rummages through a bundle of objects. He offers you a tiny metal tag etched with snake imagery. Counter-curse charm, he says, for those who walk where they shouldn't. You don't argue. You buy it. You don't even care that it was overpriced. You slip it into your belt, already feeling spiritually safer by 7%. Farther down the alley, you see faded chalk circles on the ground, ritual spaces drawn at night and scrubbed away in the morning. Some are simple rings, others have complex patterns inside them, symbols, geometric shapes, references to gods. You avoid stepping on any of them, just in case. A young girl sits nearby on a doorstep, humming to herself as she braids 3 threads together, black, red, and white. She ties the braid into a knot, then another, then a third. Her mother scolds her lightly. Don't play with knot magic in the street. The girl grins mischievously. Knot magic was believed to bind fate. Literally. Bind a lover's affection, bind someone's anger, bind your own luck so it doesn't slip away. You smile at the girl. She hides the braid behind her back as if storing a secret weapon. Just when you think you've seen enough, you notice a small shrine tucked into the alley's far corner. Not a beautiful shrine, not a temple, something raw. A stone slab with offerings scattered around it. Burnt bones, wilted herbs, melted wax shaped into faces. A place for the gods who preferred shadows. A crow perches on the shrine's top, staring at you with unsettling focus. It caws once, then goes silent. The old curse scribe calls out, "That's a warning. Someone near you is tangled in dark intentions." You swallow hard. It could be anyone, a stranger, a neighbour, maybe even that girl with the knot magic hobby. But there's one thing you're certain of. Rome's cheerful marketplaces and sunny plazas hide a vast underworld of whispered fears and secret rituals. curses and counter-curses woven through daily life like invisible threads. You step out of the alley and into the sunlight again, exhaling slowly. It feels like crossing from night into day, even though it's still noon. As you walk away, the snake-etched charm at your belt feels heavier, warmer, protective. In Rome, fate might be fixed, but people still try to bend it from the shadows. And now, you've seen the place where they do. You walk away from the alley of curses, letting the sunlight wash over you like a warm reminder that not all of Rome's unseen forces lurk in shadowed cracks. Some, many in fact, demand attention in the open, because if curses are whispers, rituals are declarations, and nowhere are those declarations louder, brighter, or more complicated than in Rome's temples. You find yourself drifting toward one now, drawn by the slow thunder of footsteps, the murmur of prayers, and the rhythmic clatter of offerings being placed on polished stone. The temple rises before you in pale, looming majesty, its columns fluted like ribs of some colossal creature. Smoke curls from an unseen brazier, drifting lazily into the sky like incense-scented clouds. As you approach the steps, something inside you quiets. Not from reverence exactly, but from awareness. Romans believed temples were saturated with sacred presence, the gods thick in the air, watching every move, every gesture, every poorly timed itch. A mainstream belief held that mistakes in ritual weren't just embarrassing, they were dangerous. A stuttered prayer, a dropped offering, even a sneeze at the wrong moment could invalidate the whole rite. Historians still argue about the exact level of anxiety Romans felt performing rituals, but given the sheer number of detailed instructions carved into temple walls, you're guessing the stress level was somewhere between public speaking while juggling knives and carrying a tray of full wine cups across uneven flooring. You step onto the first stair. Left foot, right foot. You freeze. Because yes, even temple steps carried meaning. Enter on the right foot for favor. Enter on the left. Fortuna might squint at you suspiciously for the rest of the day. You place your right foot forward. Inside, the cool air feels heavy and fragrant, thick with incense, oil, old stone, and the faint hints of 100 past sacrifices. You can feel the shift the moment you enter. Voices soften, footsteps slow. Even the birds perched in the rafters seem to hold their breath. A priest stands at the altar, clad in ceremonial white with his head veiled. He chants softly, hands hovering over a bowl of grain. A woman beside him murmurs each line after him, her voice trembling slightly. You recognize the ritual, a simple offering to ask for household protection. But you also know that if she mispronounces even a single syllable, she'll have to start over. Roman gods were picky. The priest looks up briefly as you enter, just long enough to nod in greeting before returning to the chant. You bow your head slightly, though you're not sure whether that's required or whether you're just blending in to avoid angering anything divine. You move along the temple's perimeter, observing. People leave offerings, fruit, flowers, coins, figurines, baked goods shaped like the thing they hope to receive, very popular among farmers, fields, animals, tools. One father places a small clay toy on the altar, a prayer for the health of his child. A mother touches her forehead, then the altar, then her heart, sequencing the gestures carefully like someone inputting a cheat code for cosmic protection. A quirky Roman tidbit. Many temples had temple dogs that wandered freely, believed to be favoured by the gods. You spot one now, a sleepy-looking mutt sprawled across a patch of sunlight, belly rising and falling slowly. Its presence is considered auspicious. You resist the urge to pet it. The gods might be watching, and you don't want your spiritual report card dinged for improper dog etiquette. You find a small alcove devoted to Fortuna. Her statue stands serene, draped in flowing robes, one hand holding a cornucopia and the other a rudder, because she could steer your fate or topple your fortune without warning. Offerings cover the steps before her. Coins, flowers, and at least 3 pastries that someone probably bought on the way here. You offer a tiny pinch of your market-bought salt. It feels right. Salt was precious, pure, sacred. Even a grain carried weight. To your surprise, the pinch lands perfectly in the shallow dish before her without scattering. A few worshippers murmur approvingly. One smiles at you. Yes, apparently you've passed your first temple micro-challenge, but just as you turn, you witness something tense unfolding. A young acolyte drops a ceramic bowl during a ritual. It shatters on the marble in a sharp, echoing crack. The priest gasps, a genuine, full-body gasp, and immediately stops the ceremony. This isn't a minor mistake. This is a ritual failure. Everything must be repeated, offerings replaced, chants restarted. The acolyte looks mortified. The priest offers a tight smile, the kind that says, "Your mistake was enormous, but I will not yell until after the service." Everyone else steps back, avoiding the shards as if they might still be spiritually contagious. You can almost hear the gods sighing. Historians still debate whether Romans truly feared divine punishment for these mistakes, or whether the rituals had simply become rigid traditions. But watching the tension ripple through the room, you sense it was both. Rituals weren't just technical, they were emotional anchors, ways to feel aligned with the forces shaping the world. Getting it right mattered. You stand near the doorway for a moment, watching as the ceremony resets. The rhythm of chanting begins again. The smoke rises again. The dog snores gently again. Everything returns to sacred order. Rome loves order. As you leave the temple, stepping back into the sunlight, you feel oddly relieved. The world outside seems brighter, less strict, less watchful, a little less demanding. Inside the temple, you had felt the immense weight of cosmic precision. Out here, you feel the world exhale with you. You realize something as you step back onto the bustling street. Romans didn't just pray to the gods. They negotiated, they performed, they measured every gesture. Because in a world full of omens and fate, rituals were the one place humans could talk back, directly, openly, intentionally. And fate, for all its inevitability, seemed to listen. You step away from the cool shadows of the temple and into the brightness of the street again. But the calm doesn't last long. Rome shifts around you, the pace quickening, voices rising. Something in the air feels sharper, louder, heavier. And then you realize why. You've wandered close to a military barracks. Roman soldiers, gritty, sunburned, loud, and always on the knife edge between discipline and chaos, move through the open courtyard like a river of bronze and leather. Shields clatter, boots stamp in practiced rhythm. Horses snort impatiently. You pause at the edge of the scene, pulse quickening just a little, because Roman soldiers are intimidating even when they're not trying to be. But today they are trying, because they're preparing for something big. Marching orders. And in Rome, before any soldier so much as tightened a sandal strap or lifted a spear, they needed one thing above all else. Omens. You watch as a group of officers huddle around a wooden crate, carried solemnly by two attendants like it contains the crown jewels. You know exactly what's inside, sacred chickens. Yes. The fate of the Roman military regularly depended on the appetite of poultry. One mainstream Roman belief held that the gods sent approval for military campaigns through the behavior of the sacred chickens. If the birds ate eagerly, pecking, fluttering, tossing crumbs, then the omens were good. If they refused to eat, cancel everything, or march reluctantly and expect disaster. Historians still argue whether the chickens were genuinely sacred, or just overfed and moody. Either way, generals took them very seriously. You inch closer. A man in ceremonial armor, the augur assigned to interpret the signs, opens the crate. Feathers rustle. The soldiers lean forward, eyes shining with a childlike mix of dread and enthusiasm. The augur sprinkles grain into a shallow bowl and waits. The first chicken pecks once. The second chicken pecks twice. The third chicken just stares. You hold your breath. Everyone holds their breath. Even the horses seem to stop moving. Then, finally, peck. The courtyard erupts in triumphant cheers. Spears thump the ground. Someone laughs with obvious relief. A soldier near you wipes sweat from his forehead, as if he had been personally responsible for convincing the chickens to participate. "That's good," he mutters to his friend. "Luck's on our side." You're tempted to point out that depending on bird hunger for cosmic permission is objectively chaotic, but you refrain. You like having your ribs unbroken. The soldiers begin their pre-march preparations with renewed vigor. Shields are polished, straps tightened. A young recruit throws a chunk of bread to the chickens in gratitude, because bribing fate with carbs is apparently universal. But here's something strange. As soldiers prepare to march, they're not just checking weapons, they're hunting for omens. Everything becomes potentially meaningful. A spear falls from a rack and clatters to the ground. Everyone freezes. "Bad sign," whispers someone. A centurion strides forward, picks it up, examines it closely. "It fell point first," he announces. "Good." The group exhales in relief. Another soldier sneezes, once, loudly. His companions gasp. He sneezes again. The tension melts into laughter. "Blessing," someone shouts. "Mars approves." You start to notice a rhythm. Soldiers become almost superstitiously alert. A dog trotting through the yard, a message, a sudden cool breeze, a confirmation, a crow cawing overhead. Watchfulness from the gods. Every movement echoes with potential significance. A quirky Roman tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some soldiers refuse to march if they tripped stepping out of camp. Entire units delayed operations because a centurion's sandal strap snapped. One general once claimed lightning striking nearby meant he should advance immediately, even though every sane person would have interpreted that as go back inside. A young soldier, the kind who still has hope in his eyes, approaches you. "You there," he says. "You walked in without stumbling, that's good luck. Stand here a moment, don't move." You don't argue. You stand still like a decorative tree while he makes his final preparations. He nods at you respectfully before heading off, as if you personally guaranteed his safety through basic locomotion. A group of veterans sits nearby, sharpening their blades and exchanging stories about the strangest omens they've ever seen. "One time," one says, "a pig squealed twice at dawn. Only twice. We refused to move until it squealed a third time." Another scoffs. "Squeals don't matter. What matters is shadows. March only when your shadow falls behind you, means the gods are at your back." A third veteran nods sagely. Shadows. Always shadows. You're starting to sense a theme. The Roman army was terrifyingly efficient, but also spiritually dramatic. You watch the camp standard bearer raise the unit's eagle standard. The golden figure glints in the sun. Soldiers bow their heads reverently. Losing this standard in battle was unthinkable, an omen so catastrophic that entire legions would risk annihilation to retrieve it. As the preparations wind down, the augur raises his staff and calls out the official reading for the day. His voice rings clear. "The gods favour this march. Move with confidence. Guard yourselves from envy. Watch for signs from the west." The soldiers cheer, pounding their shields rhythmically. The sound vibrates in your chest. Historians debate whether the soldiers' belief in omens actually improved their morale or simply provided structure in terrifying situations. But watching them now, faces alight, steps steady, fear tempered, you understand. In a world of uncertainty and danger, believing the gods marched with you made each step easier. The centurion calls commands, units form, rows tighten, boots stomp the ground, dust rises. Before they leave, the young soldier you spoke to earlier looks back once, catching your eye. He gives you a grateful nod, as if the mere fact that you entered the camp without tripping was enough to tip fate slightly in his favour. You lift a hand in a small wave. Then the soldiers march out of the courtyard, chants echoing, armour shining, their spirits steadied by signs from feathers, shadows and the sky. When the gate closes behind them, the air shifts again. The courtyard suddenly feels quieter, emptier. The echo of omens lingers faintly. You take a breath and step away from the barracks, realizing something delicate but powerful. In Rome, courage doesn't come from steel. It comes from signs, tiny threads of certainty woven through the chaos, and the soldiers carried those threads like armour. As you continue along the street, the distant beat of marching fades, but the weight of fate follows you still. You leave the military quarter behind, letting the fading rhythm of marching boots dissolve into the softer, humming chaos of everyday Rome. And as you walk, the city shifts again, its tone turning lighter, its pace slowing, its energy tinged with something warmer, softer, and frankly more chaotic than a courtyard full of soldiers. Love, lust, romance, and all the deeply dramatic omens tangled around them. Because if there is one realm where Romans truly believed the universe had opinions, it's romance. Lucky glances, unlucky words, dangerous days for dates, forbidden hours for confessions. Love in Rome is basically a tightrope walk over a pit of cosmic crocodiles. And you're walking straight into that arena now. You turn the corner and find yourself on a lively street near a row of taverns, wine shops and perfumeries. This area hums with flirtation. People lean against doorways, eyes meet, smiles flicker, and every tiny interaction seems to spark a cascade of meaning. A young man sits on a step, plucking petals from a flower one by one, slowly, dramatically, as though petitioning Venus herself. When he sees you glance over, he shrugs. "Trying to see if she likes me," he says. "How's it going?" you ask. He holds up the stem. No petals left. "Not good," he sighs. You offer a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. Petal omens are unforgiving. A mainstream Roman belief held that romance was governed by Venus, Fortuna, and a whole swarm of lesser spirits who delighted in messing with people's love lives just for fun. Historians still argue whether people took these signs seriously, or whether they just offered handy excuses for heartbreak. But judging by the anxiety painted on this young man's face, you're guessing the former. You move on, passing a group of women buying perfume. Scented oils were common in Rome: jasmine, rose, myrrh, but choosing the wrong scent for a romantic encounter? Disaster. One woman tests a small vial and instantly wrinkles her nose. "Too bitter," she says. "Bad omen. Love must be sweet." Her friend counters, "Sweet scents attract bees." "Bees are sacred. Bees sting." You quietly leave the debate before someone invokes cosmic bee symbolism. As you continue, you overhear two men arguing about whether meeting a potential lover on an odd-numbered day is auspicious. One insists odd numbers draw passion. The other says odd days invite instability. The argument is spirited enough that someone might need Mars, not Venus, to settle it. You try to slip past unnoticed, but a fortune-teller perched near a doorway calls out, "You there, come, I see questions in your heart." You absolutely do not have romantic questions in your heart, but she's committed. Before you can protest, she grabs your hand and examines your palm with narrowed eyes. "You've had a dream recently," she declares, "one with water." You swallow. "Okay, that's alarmingly accurate." She leans closer. "Someone from that dream watches you." You assure her that no winged fish are trying to court you, but she waves your words away. "Dream omens and love omens are siblings," she says. "They walk together." She presses a tiny charm into your palm, a copper heart pierced with a miniature arrow. "For protection," she says. "Love can be dangerous." You nod politely and continue walking, tucking the charm next to your growing collection of amulets. Your belt is starting to jingle like a festive wind chime. Up ahead, a couple stands beneath a balcony. The man recites poetry, loudly, passionately, and with the chaotic confidence of someone who has definitely not checked for omens first. As he speaks, a pigeon lands on the balcony railing above him. It cocks its head. The crowd gasps. Because pigeons above your head during a confession? Bad. Very bad. Especially if the bird is making that suspicious pre-poop face. The woman looks uncertain. The man keeps talking. The pigeon flutters its wings ominously. You back away slowly. This is not your disaster to witness. Nearby, a girl throws a pebble over her shoulder. It lands near a young man. Deliberate or accidental, you're not sure. But when he notices, he blushes. Pebble throwing was sometimes used as a subtle romantic signal. Whether she meant it or not, she now has his full attention. Romans believed subtlety was an omen-ridden tightrope. Speak too boldly, and you anger fate. Speak too softly, and you miss fate entirely. Love required perfect timing, which the universe almost never provided. A quirky Roman tidbit surfaces in your mind. Lovers sometimes check the direction of the wind before meeting. If the wind blew toward you, good. If it blew away, cancel the date. Immediately. You feel a breeze now, light, warm, swirling gently. A few people turn their heads instinctively, interpreting its direction with varying degrees of scientific accuracy. You approach a small shrine to Venus standing in an alcove. People leave offerings, rose petals, ribbons, pastries shaped like hearts or doves. A musician plays a soft melody nearby, hoping a passing sweetheart might hear and interpret it as fate pulling strings. A woman stands before the shrine, whispering to herself. "Bring him back," she murmurs. "Bring him back on a day blessed by the stars." She places a tiny mirror on the altar, a symbol meant to reflect the lover's heart. Just then, a vase slips from the altar and shatters on the ground. The woman gasps. The musician stops playing mid-note. Everyone watches. "Venus says no," someone whispers. The woman's shoulders sink. You feel bad for her, even though Roman omens aren't known for their bedside manner. As you continue wandering, the street grows livelier. People flirt through windows, pass notes tucked in bread loaves, exchange glances full of secret meaning, or misinterpretation. And through all of it, the omens swirl. A sneeze from a passing stranger, blessing or banishment. A stray dog lying across your path, never cross it, love will slip away. Hearing someone say your crush's name accidentally, fate nudging, hearing a crow caw during a confession, abort mission. You begin to realize something. Romans weren't just obsessed with love, they were obsessed with interpreting love. Because romance, messy, unpredictable, wonderful, felt like the one arena where fate's influence was truly palpable. Signs weren't just signs, they were lifelines, warnings, invitations, and sometimes sabotage. As you step out of the district, you hear a couple arguing softly behind you. "But the wind wasn't right," the woman insists. "You can't break up with me because of wind," the man protests. You smile to yourself and continue onward, heart a little lighter. Because whether or not you believe the omens, there's something charming, almost comforting, about a world where the universe seems personally invested in your love life, where fate whispers, the wind nudges, and even pigeons cast votes. You drift away from the perfume-scented tangle of lovers' omens and find yourself once again on Rome's broad, sun-soaked streets. The city stretches ahead, bustling, unpredictable, alive, and suddenly you're aware of just how vulnerable travel feels in a world ruled by signs. Because moving through Rome isn't just moving, it's risk. And Romans believed the moment you left familiar walls, fate kept closer watch. Even a short walk across town could become a spiritual obstacle course. You approach one of the city's main gates, where travellers gather in a loose, buzzing crowd. Merchants with carts, messengers, farmers leading animals, soldiers off duty. A few people who clearly got lost and are pretending they meant to be here. And all of them perform small rituals instinctively, the way modern travellers pat their pockets for keys and wallets. One man kisses a charm before leaving the gate. Another taps the threshold stone 3 times with his sandal. A woman reaches out and touches the city wall. A silent goodbye, or maybe a plea. Because Romans knew, once you step beyond these walls, omens track you like shadows. You pause just before the threshold. Stepping out with the wrong foot is bad luck. Stepping out when someone sneezes nearby is terrible luck. Stepping out after a crow caws behind you? Forget it. Cancel the trip. Try again tomorrow. You hover for a moment. Right foot. Calm breath. Silence behind you. Go. You step through. Outside, the air feels different. Less cramped. Broader. But also wilder. Romans treated travel days with enormous respect. A mainstream belief held that each journey carried its own fate, almost like a second life running alongside your regular one. Historians still argue whether this idea grew from old rural traditions or urban anxieties about bandits, storms, or strange landscapes. Either way, the belief stuck. The road ahead winds gently, between fields dotted with olive trees and small shrines. Travel shrines were everywhere. Tiny stone guardians meant to protect those daring enough to wander from home. You approach the first one now, a weathered little pillar topped with a carving of a watchful god. Offerings clutter the base, flowers, fruit, one very stale piece of bread, and a clay face that looks like someone's nephew tried sculpting and gave up halfway. You place a coin, your lucky coin from the stew shop, just long enough to touch the stone, not to leave it, just to let the shrine see it. A polite cosmic introduction. Then you tuck it back into your pouch. A few travellers give approving nods. Ritual solidarity. You continue walking. Birds chatter overhead. Sparrows, mostly. Nothing ominous. Until a lone raven swoops across the road in front of you. Sharp-eyed, silent, purposeful. A woman nearby gasps and grabs your sleeve. "Don't cross that spot," she warns. "Go around." You do. Because honestly, you've learned not to argue with omen experts. Up ahead, a man leading a donkey stops abruptly. The donkey refuses to move, stubbornly plants its hooves. The man groans. "That means bad luck," he says. "Something is waiting on the path." He scratches his head, sighs, and turns the donkey around. The donkey brays triumphantly, as though pleased with its own spiritual intuition. You continue past them, half expecting to encounter a disaster, but all you find is a small lizard sunning itself on the stones. Maybe that's what the donkey feared, or maybe the donkey had simply decided it wanted brunch instead of travel. But that's the maddening thing about omens. Are they messages or excuses? You keep walking, but your path soon approaches something Romans feared far more than ravens or donkeys with attitudes: a crossroads. You can feel it before you see it. The air shifts, the road widens, then splits into 3 branching paths. A stone marker sits at the centre, carved with worn letters and an ominous-looking face. Crossroads are spiritually messy, liminal zones where fates blur and spirits wander. You slow your steps, scanning for signs. That's when you hear it. A faint tink, tink, tink of metal hitting stone. You look down. A bronze button sits exactly in the centre of the crossroads. No owner in sight. A dropped object at a crossroads is a huge omen. Some believed it marked a fate point, a moment where your choices could branch dramatically. Others whispered that discarded items here belonged to spirits, not people. Touch them, and you risked entangling yourself in someone else's destiny. You decide not to touch the button. Smart. You skirt around it, choosing the right-hand road, historically safer, spiritually less chaotic, ideally less raven-infested. You walk on, the countryside opening around you. Trees sway gently, wildflowers bloom. A man ahead of you scatters grain into the air, murmuring to Fortuna for safe passage. Moments. Later, a gust of wind lifts the grain and blows it back into his face. He takes this badly. He abandons his trip and walks home in shame. You carry on. The sky dims slightly as a small cloud passes overhead. Not a big one, but the shadow it casts moves across the road like a living thing. You remember the astrologer's warning. Be careful of shadows today. You stop walking. The shadow glides ahead of you, pauses on the stones, then drifts away as the cloud moves on. You exhale slowly. A coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe a reminder that you're not exactly unobserved. A cart approaches from behind, wheels squeaking, the driver humming. As he passes, he taps the side of the cart twice, a ritual to keep spirits away from the road. Another traveller spits on the ground for protection. A third adjusts a charm at her throat, glancing nervously at the trees. Travel is a team effort, apparently. A quirky Roman tidbit. Some people believed unlucky days, dies nefasti, made travel impossible. They stayed home, refusing even to cross their own threshold. You're fortunate today isn't one of those days, or you'd still be standing in your doorway debating sandal etiquette. As you near the next settlement, a gentle breeze lifts your tunic. The wind smells like figs and warm earth. You can see rooftops ahead, smoke rising from hearth fires, children laughing, a dog sleeping belly up in the shade. You made it. No freak accidents, no cosmic warnings, no ravens staging dramatic reenactments, just a quiet, safe arrival. And as you step into the village, you realize something. Travel in Rome is both terrifying and beautiful, because every step is watched over by forces you don't fully understand. Every shadow, every sound, every stubborn donkey could push your journey in a new direction. But when you finally reach your destination, the feeling is like fate's gentle nod. You made it. You navigated the signs. You honored the omens. You kept your thread unbroken, and the road, this unpredictable living thing, let you pass. You step fully into the little village, warm light, drifting cooking smells, a murmur of small voices, and for a moment you think, finally, a place without omens. But Rome has other plans, because here, in the softer, quieter pockets of daily life, the Romans turn their gaze inward. Not to dreams, not to birds, not to crossroads, but to the body, to every ache, twitch, fever, shiver, rash, or cramp. Because in ancient Rome, illness wasn't just illness. It was communication, a message, a warning, a nudge from the gods, the spirits, or the strange invisible forces that tugged at human fate. You take a few steps down the village's main path when it hits you. A faint, sharp pinch in your shoulder, maybe from carrying your little pouch of charms, maybe from all the walking, But when a Roman woman sweeping the doorway glances up and sees you rubbing your shoulder, her eyes widen. "Omen of overexertion," she whispers to her neighbour. "A warning from your body spirit." Your body spirit. Nice. You politely lower your hand and walk faster. A mainstream Roman belief held that physical symptoms were coded messages from the divine. Pain on the right side, protective spirits nudging you. Left side, a warning, sudden fever, a sign of spiritual imbalance, trembling hands, an omen of dishonesty, your dishonesty or someone else's. Historians still debate whether Romans interpreted every sensation literally, or whether this was a coping mechanism in a world without reliable medicine. But judging from the concerned looks you're getting, this village leans hard into the everything means something approach. As you walk, you pass a small crowd gathered around an elderly healer, part doctor, part priest, part therapist, part neighbour with strong opinions. She presses her fingertips to a man's forehead, muttering a chant. The man's eyes flutter nervously. "He has a fever," she says, "sent by Apollo to slow him down. He must rest today." The man looks ready to protest, but the gathered crowd nods with such fierce agreement that he accepts his divine-mandated nap. You continue walking, watching your step carefully. Because in Rome, tripping while sick meant the illness came with a message, and honestly, you don't want additional commentary on your health. But fate has a sense of humour. A child runs past you at full speed, bumps your leg and squeals with laughter. The impact sends a tiny jolt up your shin, a harmless one. But the old man sitting near the fountain gasps. "A twitch," he declares, "a sign of approaching change." It's just a child, you want to say, but several villagers immediately glance at you as if waiting for you to interpret this important bodily omen. You give them a weak smile and retreat before someone demands you diagnose yourself publicly. Nearby, a woman sits grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. Her sleeves are rolled up, her face intent. She hums under her breath. On the table beside her sits a small clay statue of Hygeia, goddess of health and cleanliness. The woman taps the statue's head gently each time she adds a new herb to the mixture. You stop to watch her work. "Do you need healing?" she asks without looking at you. "Maybe," you admit. "My shoulder pinched earlier." She nods with deep seriousness. "That is your body's omen," she says. "A whisper from within. Something in your life is unbalanced." You resist the urge to confess that everything in your life is unbalanced, starting with the part where you're temporarily stuck in ancient Rome decoding pigeon behaviour. She hands you a small pouch of herbs anyway. Smell this when the ache comes, it invites harmony. You thank her and move on, clutching your new herbal charm. A quirky Roman tidbit surfaces in your mind. Some Romans believed that illnesses arrived through the air, riding on the breath of offended spirits. Others thought sickness came from wandering ghosts, touching the living with cold fingers, and some were surprisingly scientific. They blamed bad water, dirty streets, or questionable food. Yet even the practical explanations blended with symbolism. A stomachache wasn't just bad stew, it could mean you'd swallowed a lie. A headache wasn't just dehydration, it might signal someone was thinking harmful thoughts about you. You pass a man sitting on a low wall, rubbing his temples. His friends gather around him in worried silence. One asks, "Who angered the gods on your behalf?" Another suggests he's asleep facing a different direction. A third recommends sacrificing a fig. They look at you as if inviting your opinion. You pretend to be deeply preoccupied with a passing goat, which as it turns out is an omen too. The goat pauses beside you, sniffs your tunic, then sneezes. Gasps erupt around you. A goat sneeze was believed to signify spiritual cleansing, a removal of bad energy. People actually wipe the dust near the sneeze spot for luck. The villagers nod approvingly at you now, like you've been purified by goat snot. You continue walking, trying not to look overwhelmed. Soon you reach a little house where a girl sits on a stool with one leg stretched out. Her mother is gently painting symbols on the girl's ankle, with a thin brush dipped in wine. You watch, mesmerized. "A sprain," the mother explains, "so we mark her skin with signs of strength. This tells the spirits she will heal." The girl beams proudly, as if receiving a badge of honour. You realise something then. Illness in Rome isn't weakness, it's dialogue. A conversation between the body, the spirit world, and the gods. And the village participates actively. As you move farther down the path, you feel a sharp hiccup burst from your chest. unexpected and loud. Several people turn toward you immediately. Hiccup, a woman says, a blessing, a reminder to speak honestly today. That's manageable. You nod gratefully and keep walking, already wondering if your next sneeze will trigger a philosophical debate. At the edge of the village you pause, your body feels normal, no aches, no twitches, no mysterious pains, but after everything you've seen you wonder, are the gods truly speaking, or are Romans extraordinarily talented at listening? Maybe both, because here illness isn't random, it's meaningful, personal, connected. And as you leave the village behind, stepping once more onto the open road, you feel a strange warmth in your chest. Not fever, not fear, just the quiet reassurance that, even in pain, discomfort, or sickness, you're never alone. Your body talks, the universe listens, and Rome interprets. You leave the little village behind, your steps quiet on the sun-warmed road, and something in the air shifts again. Not colder, not darker, but heavier, weightier, as if every sound is echoing just a little too slowly, as if even the wind is thinking twice before crossing your path. Because now, without meaning to, you've wandered into the territory of Rome's final and most unsettling category of omens. Death signs, warnings, whispers from the edge of the living world. The Romans lived beside death the way modern people live beside traffic, constantly aware of it, never truly safe from it, always interpreting its approach. It wasn't morbid to them. It was practical, sensible, necessary. When life is unpredictable and medicine is inconsistent at best, you learn to read the shadows. You find yourself walking along a quiet lane lined with tall cypress trees, the classic Roman symbol of mourning. Their branches sway slightly, making a dry, whispering sound that settles deep in your spine. A woman passing you presses 2 fingers to her forehead, then to her heart, then toward the trees. "Sign of endings," she murmurs. You give her a sympathetic nod and continue. A few steps later, a small bird, brown, delicate, frantic, flutters down from nowhere, lands briefly in your path and then darts away. A passerby gasps. "A messenger," he says. "A warning of transition." Transition. The Roman euphemism for death, change, loss, or all three. You watch the bird vanish and wonder whether the omen was meant for you, or if you just happened to witness a bird with questionable spatial awareness. Up ahead, you hear muted crying. A small procession moves in slow, steady rhythm. 4 men carrying a wooden bier draped with cloth, a cluster of mourners following. You step respectfully aside. The group passes a dog lying on the roadside. The dog lifts its head, watches the bier, and whines once, soft and low. People around you tense. A dog's cry during a funeral procession? Extremely bad. Terrible luck for someone nearby. Possibly everyone nearby. You hold your breath and avoid eye contact with everyone until the group disappears into the distance. A mainstream Roman belief held that death always announced itself. Through dreams, through animals, through odd knocking sounds in the walls, through lamps that flickered without cause. It wasn't the fear of death itself that terrified Romans. It was failing to notice its warning signs. Historians still argue whether these warnings were psychological coping mechanisms or communal storytelling that became culturally universal. But walking through this quiet road, surrounded by people who flinch at every shadow, you can see how real these signs must have felt. A small house sits on your left, its door decorated with a wreath of dark leaves, not for celebration, for mourning. A woman sits outside grinding grain slowly, rhythmically. Behind her, faint chanting drifts from inside the home. A death vigil, she meets your gaze and offers a sad smile. "We heard 3 knocks on the wall last night," she says. "We knew it was time." 3 knocks, not made by anyone living, a death omen as old as the hills. You shiver slightly, though the air is warm. As you walk on, you pass another home where a man sits sharpening a knife. Not for cooking, but for protection. Some Romans believed restless spirits tried to follow the living, especially during mourning periods. A sharp blade, polished mirrors, or loud noises could repel them. He doesn't look frightened, just dutiful, like someone performing a familiar chore. Farther ahead, you hear a sudden shout. A young boy runs out of a house, pale as marble, clutching something in his hand, a cracked egg. His mother rushes after him. "It's split without reason," he cries. "In my palm!" His mother snatches the egg and hurls it into the dirt, where it bursts. She spits twice toward the ground. "Bad sign," she whispers. "Very bad." Eggs were symbols of life. A cracking egg, spontaneously or in the wrong context, was believed to predict death in the household. You back away quietly before the mother decides the omen might apply to whoever witnesses it. But the most unsettling sign arrives moments later. You hear footsteps behind you, light, almost soundless. You turn. No one is there. You blink, listen. Nothing, except a very faint tap against your right sandal, as if someone brushed past you, or something. A woman walking nearby sees your startled expression. She presses her hand over her mouth and mutters, "A passing spirit. Don't speak to it. Don't acknowledge it." You swallow hard. A cold shiver skitters up your spine. A quirky Roman tidbit comes to mind. Many believed the dead lingered temporarily, drifting through familiar places, touching objects, or even people lightly. Not to harm them, just to signal departure, their final hello, or their final goodbye. You continue walking, heart beating a little too hard. At the edge of the road sits a tiny shrine to the Lera's priestites, protective guardians of the city. Someone has placed 3 small lamps at its base. Only 2 burn. One has gone out. A man kneeling before the shrine gasps when he notices. "A lamp extinguished before its time," he whispers. "A warning. A soul passing." He lights it again quickly, as if trying to persuade fate to reconsider. You keep moving, wishing suddenly that you were back among the astrologers, or even the curse scribes, because somehow this feels heavier than all of that, more final. In Rome, death isn't an ending. It's a presence, a force, a traveller who walks beside you for a few steps before moving on to someone else's road. As you reach the end of the cypress-lined lane, the atmosphere lightens, sunlight warms your face again. Children's voices echo distantly. Life swells back into the city's heartbeat. You take one long, steady breath. Even the Romans knew, death signs demand respect, not obsession. Attention, not fear. They believed that recognizing the omens gave harmony to the living and honor to the dead. And as you leave the shadow of the cypresses behind, you feel something loosen in your chest. A quiet gratitude that today, the signs brushed past you, not toward you. You step back into the living world fully, letting the road guide you forward. The city brightens as you step away from the cypress shadows, sunlight pouring over rooftops like a slow golden tide. You breathe deeply, letting the warmth settle against your skin, and as you walk, a strange realization begins to form. Through every step of your day, from omens in your bedroom to whispers on the wind, from goat sneezes to sacred chickens to your own stubborn heartbeat, something has been weaving itself around you. A web, an invisible, intricate web of meaning. And now, as you enter a familiar square near the centre of Rome, you feel the full weight of it. The sense that your day hasn't just been a collection of signs, it's been a lesson. A slow apprenticeship in how Romans saw the world, how they moved through it, how they explained every joy, every fear, every uncertainty. You pause beside a low wall, letting your gaze drift. Vendors clear their stalls. Children chase each other in chaotic circles. A man plays a reed flute so painfully off-key that even the pigeons are judging him from a distance. Everything looks ordinary, but for the Romans, nothing was ever just ordinary. A pot cracks, a message, a sneeze, a warning, a laugh at the wrong moment, a signal. A breeze on your right cheek, a subtle nudge from a watching spirit. Rome didn't see the world as random. It saw it as layered, alive, constantly speaking. You step through the square, passing a woman lighting a tiny oil lamp at a street altar. As she shields the flame with her hand, she murmurs, "For balance." The flame quivers, then steadies. She smiles in satisfaction. You've seen that exact expression all day long. The little breath of relief when the universe seems to nod back. A group of elderly men sit on a shaded bench nearby, arguing about fate. One insists that Fortuna favours boldness. Another claims Fortuna is fickle and needs coaxing. A third simply shrugs and says, "Fortuna doesn't like being talked about. which ends the debate faster than logic ever could. You pause a moment, listening to them bicker, and something inside you softens. This is Rome, a place where fate is debated like politics and interpreted like poetry. You continue walking until the Temple of Fortuna rises ahead, large, watchful, solemn. You've passed shrines and altars all day, but this is different. This is the heart of Roman belief in luck, chance, destiny, the thin threads that hold a life together. You climb the steps again, right foot first, because that habit has now permanently imprinted itself into your soul, and step into the cool interior. The air shimmers with incense, soft footsteps echo. A priest arranges fresh offerings on the altar, fruit, flowers, carefully folded cloth, gleaming coins. The statue of Fortuna watches with her calm, inscrutable expression, one hand holding the cornucopia of abundance, the other resting lightly on a rudder. Control and chaos, abundance and uncertainty, blessing and warning. You approach slowly, the marble cool under your sandals. A few other people stand nearby whispering prayers. One woman slips a ring onto the altar, another places a scrap of parchment marked with a wish. A man gently touches the statue's base, bowing his head in silent gratitude. And you reach for your coin pouch, your lucky stew coin, warm from being handled so often. You place it on the altar and rest your fingertips against the cool stone. The room grows quiet around you. You think of the morning's first omen, the wobbling cup, the crossroads and their complicated energies, the birds in the sky, the charms on your belt, the dreams pulling at the edges of your memory, the marketplace chaos, the curses whispered in shadowed alleys, the precision of temple rituals, the sacred chickens, the whispers of love, the wind on the road, the warnings of death. And now, this. Every sign, whether silly or profound, has led you here, not to a revelation, not to a prophecy, but to a simple truth. Romans didn't live in fear of fate. They surrendered to it and shaped their lives around its presence. You lift your hand from the altar and take a step back. Something in your chest feels lighter, looser, grateful, strangely enough. You turn to leave the temple. As you pass through the doorway, a soft breeze slips across your shoulders, warm, gentle, unmistakably deliberate. A farewell, perhaps, or a benediction. Outside, the sun hangs low in the sky. Evening approaches. Rome glows in amber light, its streets quieter now, its edges softer. The chaos fades, the omens quiet, the world settles. You walk slowly, letting the city's final hum envelope you. People head home, lamps are lit. Smoke curls upward from hearths and braziers, and for the first time today, everything feels still, balanced, whole. As you approach your door, you do something instinctive. You touch the frame lightly with your fingertips, greeting your household spirits with a silent, grateful acknowledgement. Inside, your lamp flickers gently as if welcoming you back. You breathe out, long, slow, peaceful. You made it through a full Roman day. You walked among signs, whispers, warnings, blessings, shadows, and light. And in the end, the tangled web doesn't feel frightening. It feels familiar. It feels like home. Now the day settles into quiet, and the bright edges of Rome soften into a gentle blur. The sounds outside your doorway fade into a distant hum. Softer footsteps, low voices, the warm crackle of a hearth fire drifting through the evening air. You loosen your shoulders, letting the weight of the day slide slowly away piece by piece. Each breath becomes a little deeper, a little slower, like a calm tide pulling back from the shore. Inside your room, the oil lamp glows with a soft, amber light. Shadows move lightly across the walls, not ominous now, just slow, gentle shapes easing into stillness. The air cools. The scent of hearth smoke and warm stone drifts in through the window. Everything feels quieter, safer, more distant from the rush of omens and signs that filled your day. You lie back on your simple straw mattress, letting your legs extend, letting your arms soften at your sides. The world narrows to calm simplicity. The city outside quiets. Your breath smooths. The lamp flame steadies. All the symbols, all the little nudges of fate, every bird, every whisper, every charm fade into the background, leaving only the steady softness of the present moment. You have walked through a full Roman day, felt its rhythms, its worries, its mysterious comfort. And now you can let it go. Let the stories drift, let the signs fade, let your thoughts settle like dust floating gently to the ground. The night gathers around you like a warm cloak, safe, quiet, unhurried. Breathe once more, slowly, and allow the gentle weight of sleep to begin closing its hand around you.